Welcome to the Data Transforms Your E-Commerce webinar. Just a few housekeeping tips before we begin. Since this is on demand, you are welcome to stop and start to fit your schedule or your particular interest. Each of our speakers will be sharing between 30 to 45 minutes. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email at hello@coreshopsolutions.com. We do have quite a lineup for you today, beginning with author and Amazon expert Brian Beck. We will have e-commerce practitioners from Citizen Watch America, Hampton Products, as well as Sanders Sporting Goods. Industry experts in e-commerce will share on data management, as well as the all-important predictive search. Enjoy this webinar, and for now, please welcome Brian Beck.
Thrilled to be here. I'm so excited you had me speak, and yeah, I mean, the whole B2B sector is so prime for digital transformation. This is such a timely conference, so I'm excited to be a part of the B2B e-commerce success conference. So let me go ahead and just dive in. So a little bit about my background. I am the author, as Rob mentioned, of billion-dollar B2B e-commerce. This is the industry's first playbook, really for manufacturers, distributors, brands, anyone who is operating in the B2B sector to really sell their products and enable themselves digitally. It's 12 chapters and 400 pages and a lot of content. So I'm going to share a little bit of that today. And I'm also going to get into quite a bit today also about Amazon. So in addition to being an author, I'm also the managing partner of a company called Enceba. And at Enceba, we run Amazon programs for B2B companies in particular, with a focus on that channel, on the Amazon business channel. My background is long and varied. I've been in the e-commerce business for 20 years. I've, thankfully done some things right, but also made just about every mistake in the book. And so I've learned a lot along the way, and I bring that to clients today and help them to transform their businesses. I've been focused a lot on the B2B sector in the last few years. And I'm excited to share with you both some of the learnings from the book, as well as talk about Amazon today and what Amazon is doing in the B2B sector. So here's what I have to share. First, e-commerce, your time is now. That's really the first chapter in the book. It's what it's called, the time is now. And I say that for a reason. It's really B2B companies have an opportunity to transform themselves. And the results are just dramatic and transformative. When a B2B company that is traditionally sold through analog and traditional channels moves into the digital realm, the return on investment is just outstanding. I'm going to talk about COVID-19, a little bit about what's happening in the market as a result of COVID. And then I'm going to spend a lot of time talking with you today about Amazon Business. What is Amazon doing in the B2B sector that you need to be aware of and can take advantage of for your business? We wanted to talk about defining your Amazon strategy, and then what are some of the elements required for success. So first, I wanted to just say a word about my firm Enceba. Our clients, that's the ceiba tree. That's the tallest tree in the Amazon rainforest. That's where we took the name from. And we help our clients stand out in the rainforest and drive growth from Amazon. So I spend my days helping our companies, our clients, really understand the strategies they can use. We're based here in Los Angeles, California. You can find out more information about us on enceba.com. So again, the first chapter of the book is all about your time is now. And to kick off our conference today, I thought I'd share a few trends about B2B e-commerce and what's happening in the world and how some of these things are surprising B2B companies. The B2B buying process is now digitized, and many companies don't realize this. 90% of B2B buyers use online search. Up to 70% of the buying process is already completed before the buyer even contacts the supplier. Almost 70% narrow their selection down to just 2 or 3 suppliers, and by the end of this year, 55% of B2B buyers will make half or more of their purchases online. With these trends in place, I ask you, how well enabled are you from a digital commerce perspective? These things are sneaking up on many B2B businesses. That's why your time is now. And we talk about why. Why is this happening? Well, at the end of the day, buying or selling online is both more effective for sellers. It's more convenient for buyers. And it's really a path that buyers are taking because they're their consumer in their consumer lives, they're using e-commerce. Their expectations of you as a B2B seller are tied directly to their experiences as B2C buyers. They buy from Amazon, for example, regularly. The biggest difference, though, is that B2B buyers are doing this because it's their job. And as a result, they use sites, and they want to use sites that make their jobs easier. It's different than a consumer's life, where when a consumer is shopping online, they're doing it more for immersion, for fun, for searching, for identification with a lifestyle or brand. In the B2B realm, it's very much about making the buyer's job easier. And if you're not making their jobs easier, those buyers will find other channels to buy products like your competitors' products, or they'll go to Google, or they'll go to Amazon, and they'll look for products where it's easier for them to buy. One of the things that's important to know too is that many of the buyers, the B2B buyers that are coming into the workforce today, are digital natives. In fact, 75% of them are millennials, or will be millennials within 4 years. So there's a real trend happening here amongst your buyer base. And finally, a lot of what's driving the volume in B2B are simpler, reorderable products, products that are more sort of like parts or commodities or consumables. That's also changing, though. I have clients today that are selling products that are worth millions of dollars on their website and successfully completing transactions in literally in the millions of dollars on their website. So it's really, this whole market has shifted and becoming more digitized. So this is what I was referring to on the last slide. Today's B2B buyers, I call them Amazon natives, and it's because they are. Millennials born between 1980 and 2000 will be 75% of the workforce by 2025, and they're moving into their B2B procurement roles. And here's a couple trends about millennials you need to be aware of. In 2019, they made 60% of their work purchases online. Think about that, folks. That's more purchases online than offline. 40% of their purchases were made offline. So this number is continuing to grow. In 2017, the online purchase number was 47%. These are your B2B buyers. 2/3 of millennials make half or more of their purchases from Amazon. Almost 100% use Amazon for at least part of their online shopping. It's incredible. So this group is silently and quickly becoming the majority of your buyers. You need to be paying attention to this. So many of you will recognize this. This is the traditional value chain, right? This is how businesses in the B2B sector have bought and sold from each other for many years. Product manufacturer makes a product, sells it to the offline distributor, and then the buyer, the end user, buys the product, right? Very simple. At each stage, there's clear value add. Well, today, the whole value chain is different and has become highly digitized. So today's complex supply chain, the manufacturer may sell direct to the end customer, the B2B customer, or in some cases the consumer. And the whole center of this has also become digitized, excuse me, and evolved. The distributor or reseller who was traditionally offline now has digital channels, e-commerce. There are pure play e-commerce retailers in the marketplace today. These are folks that have popped up to just sell online. They have no brick and mortar. And then you have marketplaces, companies like Amazon and Alibaba and others that have really dominated the B2C market for many years now in e-commerce are now coming into B2B. There's also vertical marketplaces, vertical industry marketplaces that are coming in. What this does is it shifts the power to the buyer or the end user, the consumer or B2B buyer of your product, and it allows them more choice than they've ever had, more transparency on price, more transparency on availability of product information. I like to tell the story of the car dealer here, where the car dealers in history have often, if you go back 20 years ago, they would make their money from the sale of cars, the actual product sales. Well, think about your own buying process for an automobile these days. When you walk into an auto dealer, you're armed with the price you should pay, every feature and functionality about that car, all the different places you can buy the car from. You have more choice and more transparency in that process. Well, that dealer's margin, auto dealer's margin 20 years ago has now shrunk. It was something in the 20% range. Today, it's down around 3 or 4%. The auto dealer has had to change. And now they make money from service, from warranties, from other value-added services. Those same dynamics are coming in B2B. With this transparency, it puts the power in the hand of the buyer. like never before. So what does this mean? Well, to this fellow, his name is Jeff Bezos, and if I could take a virtual poll, most of you will know who he is. He's the CEO and founder of Amazon. And I think he has a quote that I think says this really well, this dynamic of customers being in charge. This is from 2010, 10 years ago. The balance of power is shifting towards buyers and away from companies. The right way to respond to this, if you are a company, is to put the vast majority of your energy, attention, and dollars into building a great product or service and putting a smaller amount into shouting about it or marketing it. So think about that for your business. What are you best in the world at? And those dynamics are coming to your business. That buyer has more power than ever. So the other big factor that's impacting the market is COVID-19. I like to say this has caused 5 years of acceleration in 3 months. The pandemic has really forced the hand of e-commerce for B2B in many, many ways. Number one, homebound and remote B2B buyers have no other way to buy products in many cases. And those that have been reticent to use e-commerce now are being forced to. In fact, 50% of customers are now buying products online they have never bought before, and almost half of businesses are experiencing online sales growth. As a sign of the times here, US retail stores saw a 60% decline in foot traffic in March. And then if you look at Amazon, their sales are up 35% year over year. They've hired almost 200,000 employees to support the demand. And this is really the new normal. These behaviors, our point of view, my point of view, is that these behaviors are going to be and are ingrained. And when you think about B2B, once you go and make the buyer's job easier, you show them that it's easier and faster to buy product online, they're not going to revert to the traditional channels. So what's happening today is you're seeing a shift in B2B buying behavior, and those buyers becoming comfortable now that were not before. And if you look at some of the players in B2B e-commerce who are capitalizing on this and who are digitally ready, you'll see that their numbers in many cases are up. Watsco is a great example of a distributor, for example, that is digitally ready and enabled, and they're seeing growth in their business. And they attribute a lot of it to 100% increase in their contractors. They sell to HVAC contractors, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning contractors. 100% increase in their use of their mobile apps and other mobile capabilities. So my point simply is that B2B is being heavily accelerated by this COVID event. And it's a call to action. I call it the loudest call to action in our lifetime for digitization. So we've talked a lot about what's happening in the market. Of course, one of the big players in the market is Amazon and B2B. And many people don't realize what's happening with Amazon in B2B. And it's kind of an evolution of channels, really, is a way to think about it. One of the things that surprises executives when I share this information with them is that Amazon is now becoming has become the number one place for product search in the United States and increasingly abroad. Amazon is winning the war for product searches. If you look at where searches are starting, almost 70% of them are starting on Amazon, and that's up from 45% just 5 years ago. So COVID-19 is accelerating this trend as well. When you think about where you're putting digital marketing dollars, for example, many folks think about Google. Google's not irrelevant, but it's becoming certainly less relevant and has significantly lower share as it relates to product searches. And Amazon is dominating B2C e-commerce. It's responsible for almost 50% of US e-commerce. Now, B2C means business to consumer. Many of you will say, well, that doesn't really apply to me because I'm not in the consumer market. But I'll share with you in a moment why it does apply to you, and you need to be paying attention. Retail e-commerce sales by product category here on the right-hand side indicate significant penetration. In fact, Amazon has become the #1 apparel retailer in the United States as of last year. A lot of that is basic products, but they're bigger than Macy's and Walmart and Target and all the big clothing chains. They are the #1 apparel retailer. Just gives you a sign of what's happening in the market. So does this apply to B2B? Yes, in fact, it does. Amazon will be a dominant force in B2B. It already is a very significant player. This is some data from RBC Capital Markets, which demonstrates how quickly they've grown or are projected to grow. In 2019, Amazon business completed an estimated $16 billion in revenue. That already makes them a very, very large distributor. They're projected to be, by RBC, $52 billion in gross merchandise value in just 4 years by 2023. This is an astounding achievement if you think about how quickly they're growing this business. In fact, this just announced this year, Amazon Business has become the fastest growing part of Amazon. It eclipsed Amazon Web Services. And why? Well, they're doing a lot of things to accommodate B2B buying behavior. And it's not going to happen. It's already happened. Over 50% of B2B buyers make at least 10% of their work purchases on Amazon. This is a survey, Digital Commerce 360 survey from August of 2019, indicating that Amazon already is ingrained in buyer behavior. Think about those millennials I shared earlier and the behavior they have. Those people are becoming your B2B buyers. So this has already happened. So many people ask me, what exactly is Amazon Business? And there's reason for that. Amazon has had a couple of attempts at B2B, and Amazon Business is the one that's really been successful for them. Well, if you remember back in 2012, some of you may be familiar with something called Amazon Supply. Amazon Supply was Amazon's really first pass at B2B. It was a separate website, and 500,000 products, across scientific, industrial, other business supply categories. It was Amazon took an approach that was more like, in this first version, like their consumer presence on the internet, and they didn't succeed. But one of the things that Amazon does is they try, and when they try things and test them and they don't work, they learn and they do them again. So in 2015, they launched something called Amazon Business, which they learned from their prior experience. They kept it on the same website. They're changing the experience to really be focused on business-specific behaviors. And then one of the most important things they did is they hired people from the field to build out both the buying and selling side of Amazon's assortment. So this has worked, and they've also involved their customer and understanding what the customer needs out of the experience in order to be successful. So they have teams in the field, as I mentioned, both on the buying and selling side. They're building the assortment and the buyer base. They have tools specifically for business buyers, purchase permission setting. So if I'm a business owner, I can give rights to my business administrator or a procurement person or an office manager to buy on my behalf on my Amazon account. I can buy on terms. Amazon is extending terms to business buyers, just like distributors have for decades or hundreds of years. They have spend management tools, quote requests. I can request a quote from a seller on Amazon through Amazon Business. They have pricing tools that allow sellers to set up tiered pricing and discounted pricing. They have Business Prime, which is a business B2B version of the Prime offering. They've integrated to over 80 procurement systems. They allow sellers to set up business profiles with quality and diversity credentials. The point here, guys, is that Amazon is accommodating a lot of the things that B2B buyers want. The new B2B buyer, that millennial, wants when they come and buy from an e-commerce site for their job. And Amazon is best in class at a lot of these things. And finally, they do offer enhanced content as well. So how should you think about Amazon versus owned B2B e-commerce? Well, the way our point of view is that Amazon is not a strategy in and of itself for a manufacturer, distributor brand, whatever business you're in. It's part of a strategy and part of a way to go to market with digital, right? And that's what I talk about in the book. Chapter 7 is all about Amazon and Amazon Business in the book, but there's 12 chapters. So there's a lot of other things to focus on as well. We believe that Amazon, I believe, can be an excellent first step for you to move into e-commerce because a couple reasons. If you're not there today, it requires lower capital investment versus your own B2B e-commerce site. It also can be faster to get to market with Amazon. When you're preparing content for Amazon, it can also be used in your other digital channels, your owned channels, and even supporting your other resellers. It also builds your organizational competency around digital commerce. So ultimately, if you pick up my book and you read it, you'll find that My point of view is that you ought to have Amazon as part of your strategy, again, based on where all the search is happening, and to stay relevant to your buyer. However, it needs to be part of a broader e-commerce and digital strategy for your organization, as I just mentioned. So how do you define your Amazon strategy? What do you do as you get into this? How should you think about Amazon? Well, my point of view is that Amazon really has to be part of your strategy. And if some of you, I could get a virtual show of hands here. How many of you read this book, Good to Great? This is by Jim Collins. And I often quote this book. In fact, I have it cited in my book several times. And I love the concept he has about confronting the brutal reality of your organization. And I cite that because, if we look at, not only your organization, but the brutal reality of your marketplace. And a brutal reality is that consumer and business buyer preferences have shifted to Amazon, and you've got to be paying attention to that. So going to market without an Amazon strategy is not viable. This is a change in buyer preferences. And I believe that if your company differentiates based on product, meaning that you make a product, you're a manufacturer, you're a brand, or even if you're a distributor with private label products, this is simply a channel shift. This is a preference of your buyer on where they're searching for product and buying product, and it should be embraced. And there's nuances and all kinds of arguments that talk about Amazon and private label brands and them competing against you. Yes, those things are true, but I would challenge you to think about that in the context of your traditional channels as well. How many of your traditional distributors or retailers or other folks you sell to have their private label lines? So there's an interesting set of precedent there that you should think about and put it in context. I believe, though, that manufacturers need to be on Amazon and selling their product. If you're a distributor, you need to be on Amazon to learn. Again, think about the massive usage of this channel by your customer. Their behaviors are shaped by how they're being, the experiences they're getting on Amazon, including the post-purchase experience, the fulfillment experience. You might consider private label brands, launching them on Amazon, and even supplier exclusives. We've worked with some clients that will go to their suppliers, if they're distributors, and they'll act as their Amazon department for them, help them get onto Amazon and manage the program for them. And it's a way for both parties to win using Amazon's volume. At minimum, if you have a brand of any kind, you really need to be on Amazon, protecting that brand, registering it, and controlling any products that are on Amazon. One of my favorite and scariest activities that I do with CEOs is we'll sit down on Amazon and search their brand name and see what comes up. And oftentimes it's dozens of resellers. You don't even know who they are. There's no brand or product control at all. Sometimes they're not even relevant products, or they're products that are out of date, or you've discontinued and the product listing is terrible. This is not a good presentation on the #1 search engine in the world. There are multiple ways to tackle this. So this is the good news about Amazon and Amazon strategy, excuse me. You can manage the channel and don't necessarily need to fully sell there as well. Let me talk about those. So you have 3 options on Amazon. The first, which I think is a requirement for anyone with a brand, is to control your brand. You can own your brand and build authoritative content using something called Amazon Brand Registry. This can be used by distributor private labels, manufacturers, and brand owners as a way to manage the content that's presented on the marketplace. Number 2, you can sell directly on Amazon. Utilize Amazon's e-commerce solutions to sell directly to customers. And you can use this if you're a brand, manufacturer, distributor, really any kind of business you can sell on Amazon. The third strategy is sort of a hybrid, which is control plus leveraging resellers. Now this applies to brands and manufacturers, and this would allow you to sell to customers on Amazon by enabling your distribution network on the channel. And this allows you to use Amazon Brand Registry at the same time to control the content. So that's kind of a hybrid strategy. If you are going to sell, these are some considerations. Should you sell or not? 1, why would you sell? Well, revenue, for sure. Amazon is a significant platform in terms of revenue. We have clients generating north of $20 million a year on Amazon. It's really massive brand exposure. In fact, customers on Amazon, 65% of customers will try products from a brand they've never heard of because they trust the Amazon experience. So you get brand exposure to customers and customer categories you may not be selling today. Brand control on the #1 search engine is a good reason to get in and manage this. Potentially higher gross margins versus other channels. If you're a manufacturer or brand, when you sell on Amazon directly, you're capturing the full retail margin if you use the what's called seller central selling model. And finally, it's faster. It's faster than other ways of getting to market. You can be live with an Amazon program within a couple of months versus many months or years in some cases launching your own e-commerce. Again, don't think about them separately, but as a combined strategy. Why shouldn't you sell? Well, not your customer. Amazon owns the customer. It's true. This is, again, why I talk about if you're differentiating based on product, think about your traditional channels. You don't own the distributor's customer. The distributor does, right? These are it's an evolution, really. So not your customer, true. Pricing pressure and competition. If you do not control Amazon, the marketplace, there's significant pricing pressure which could be borne on your products, driving margin out of it. Full brand presentation control. It's still Amazon's world. It's not yours. So you don't fully control the experience. Resources you do need to invest in people to manage an Amazon program for you. And then if you sell to Amazon as a wholesaler, you do surrender more control than other methods of selling. So here's just some pluses and minuses. The other thing that I want to highlight is within the selling approach, you have two options. One is called vendor central. This is also known, of course, why have one name for anything? Amazon has many names for things. This is also known as 1P or first party. In this model here on the left-hand side of the screen, you sell directly to Amazon as a wholesaler. It's similar to how you'd sell to your distributor channel today or a retailer or a dealer. You ship to their fulfillment center on a PO and you're done, basically. I mean, you still have opportunity to do some things with content, with merchandising and marketing, but ultimately it's like a traditional resale channel relationship. On the right-hand side here is something called Seller Central, 3P or third party. This is where you set up your own storefront on Amazon. Amazon still processes the order, but the vendor, you ship to the end customer or you use something called Fulfilled by Amazon. This model actually is used by a lot of our clients on the right-hand side here for a variety of reasons. One is profitability, but also it's about control. And it's control of the retail price and also control of the brand. So there's some advantages. A lot of folks who manufacture product are moving in that direction for their Amazon selling. The other approach I described is control and plus leveraging resellers. This is number 3 on my slide a couple of slides ago. And here I'm talking about really a playbook that Amazon Business has come out with. And it talks about enabling brand and product control while enabling your resellers. Consider some of your higher value distributors or resellers you work with, enabling them and authorizing them on Amazon specifically to obtain the sales. You pair this with distribution agreements and map agreements to avoid channel conflict. And on the right here is kind of a map. I won't go through all this due to time, but if you email me, I'll send you a copy of the presentation. The flow of product and how it works is mapped out here. But it's just another way, if you as a manufacturer don't want to sell yourself, but give your channels the rights to sell and still maintain a controlled environment. So if you are going to be present on Amazon, there are some elements you need to have. And it's really about building a solid foundation on Amazon. The first step is really about assortment. This is one of our clients, a company called Big Ass Fans. If you've ever been in a big airport or industrial facility, if you look up and see a 30-foot wingspan fan, it's likely one of theirs. They're an industry leader in their category. So you don't always know, you don't always know what's going to sell on Amazon. Sometimes it's surprising. You don't want to just rely on your own data, but you really want to test and learn. And generally, the broader the assortment you start with, the better off you are. It gives you more of a chance to succeed on Amazon. Remember, the scale and scope of Amazon is enormous. So you have buyers of all types and all price points, by the way. This isn't just about inexpensive products. Look at this product here on this page. It's $738. This company has a very healthy Amazon program. You might consider private label or separate label products on Amazon. This is a common approach some manufacturers and even distributors have taken. You want to make sure you're looking at your gross margins carefully. Before you get into an Amazon program, you want to map out all the costs and expectations around volumes and other things. You need to consider fees like the fulfilled by Amazon fee and Amazon listing costs and their commissions. Great content foundational, really. It's not just about the assortment, but then it's about building great foundations around it. This is another of our clients, a company called Cardinal Health, which is a very large healthcare distributor. You need descriptive title with benefits, great images, videos, detailed descriptions and bullet points. You have to have reviews. This product has 146 reviews. You'll see it's also Amazon's choice. The other thing that's critical if you're going to get into Amazon is that you maintain what's called Prime eligibility. And if I could do another virtual show of hands, how many of you are Amazon Prime members? Well, and 99% of you would raise your hand. Well, if you think about your own buying behavior on Prime, one of the things that customers often do is they're going to sort by Prime eligibility. And that includes business customers. This isn't just about consumer behavior. People are looking for products that have the Prime badge, and it's because of that shipping guarantee. So maintaining Prime eligibility is important. And if your product is FBA certified in Amazon's warehouse, or not certified, but if you're in Amazon's warehouse using that program, your products will be Prime eligible. So Amazon also provides tools for brand management. This is really the foundation of brand control, which happens initially really outside of Amazon. So you have to think about your traditional channels. Do you have a distribution agreement in place with your channels? Are you managing the internet resale of your products if you're a distributor, or excuse me, a manufacturer? If you're a distributor, are you abiding by these policies? There's also intellectual property protection for your brand, for your products. Amazon has something called Amazon Brand Registry. I alluded to it before. It allows trademark holders to register and then control the content within the Amazon world and do things like this. This is Charlotte Pipe, and this company has set up a Amazon storefront page as well as what they call enhanced brand content, which is product content that goes onto the product listing page. And you can see here where it says Connect Tight. That's one of their product lines, and that's on Amazon. And that helps to convey the differentiation of this brand and others like it in the Amazon ecosystem. It's also important to monitor for fraud and other people you don't want selling on your products, and balancing this all between Amazon and your own site. Some of our clients, for example, will do all the things they need to do for control, put up a portion of the assortment, but also keep a portion of their product line on their own site outside of the Amazon world to sort of encourage people to discover on Amazon and then come back to their own site to find more product. So there's a variety of approaches here, but the key here is that brand management is now available to brand holders, owners on Amazon. Visibility is also critical. You know, Jeff Bezos, the founder, the fellow I showed you before, when he set out 25 years ago to start Amazon, he said, I'm going to make this the superstore, the everything store on the internet. And he was prescient. He saw what the internet could become. And he's really built that. I mean, it's almost 600 million products on Amazon. It's mind-boggling. That's in almost 1 billion products. I mean, they're trending there. And in B2B categories, they're adding tremendous assortment in MRO and office supplies and medical equipment and all these different categories, food service, all these categories are adding quite a bit of product assortment. And here's the trick though with Amazon. 70% of Amazon shoppers only buy products from the first page. So why do I say this is a search engine? Because it is, and search visibility is really important if you're going to sell your products here or even just be visible here against your competing brands and resellers. I've mapped out here on a search for iPhone chargers some of the paid search opportunities that brands have. At the top, you've sponsored brands. That's the banner across the top. You have something called sponsored products. This works something like Google where you're paying per click for visibility. You also have organic search results here, which start kind of in this example on the third row down. Organic search results you don't pay for, you have to earn your way into. And how you earn your way there, it's a lot behind that. I can't cover it. I don't have time to cover it today, but there's a lot of detail behind how you get there. It has to do with your content and seller ratings and product reviews and other things. So you do need resources to build a program like this. It's, you know, I wish I could tell you it's turn it on, set it and forget it, but it isn't. You need leadership. There needs to be a P&L for Amazon and the overall presence. And this applies, by the way, to e-commerce in general. There needs to be leadership and accountability in charge of this channel. You need people to do content planning and production for listing enhancements, brand enhancements, web merchandising. You need folks to get into merchandise your products on Amazon. There's opportunities to not only enhance the brand, but also bundle products. Amazon has events and promotions, like think about Prime Day. Probably many of you have bought on Prime Day. There's B2B specific optimizations you can do in Amazon. This is something called merchandising. You need folks to run your paid marketing campaigns in Amazon. This is a highly technical task. It involves getting in and really understanding the data, building keyword lists, understanding how your ads are being presented, when, how much you're paying for clicks, etc. It's a highly detailed function. And operational planning and support, of course, Amazon is a new channel for many companies. And so stock planning and forecasting is required, as well as servicing the channel effectively. So lots of resources. But again, this is why companies like Insiba, my company, exist to help you with those things. So key takeaways, just a couple summary steps here from what I've shared with you today. And number one, the time is now. Hopefully I've conveyed that to you through some of the statistics. If you don't digitize, you'll be left behind by your customers and frankly by competitors. You know, 50% of B2B businesses don't have e-commerce websites still, which is a tremendous number. Many see fear or disappointment or failure in that. I see opportunity for companies like you who are still need to digitize in some cases. COVID-19 is accelerating adoption of e-commerce and Amazon amongst B2B buyers. And Amazon Business is on its way, well on its way to becoming one of the world's largest distributors over the next few years. And an Amazon Business presence, as I mentioned, is a less capital-intensive way to get into e-commerce, and it prepares you for digitization across the organization. And the good news is for organizations like you is you have multiple options to get into Amazon. You don't just have to sell your products there. You can do a variety of things to make sure you're maintaining your presence and relevance. And finally, brand control, content and advertising approaches are necessary, and resources are necessary for you to be successful on the Amazon channel. So with that, I wanted to share a little bit more about my book. It's now available on Amazon, of course, and there's also some more description about the book at $1 E-Commerce.com. My email is here at the bottom in the footer of each of these slides. You can email me, and I will share the copy of the presentation with you. I welcome your calls and contacts, and here's my phone number as well as my email address. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Everybody, welcome. I'm glad you are able to attend today. Looking forward to speaking to you about the experience that I've been through with Citizen Watch America. Hopefully you're all familiar with our company and our brand. You might not know that Citizen Watch also has multiple other brands like Accutron, Alpina, Bulova, and we've got a Frederick Constant, which is a Geneva brand. And so we're a very global company, and I'm responsible for the United States and also our other markets in UK, Canada, and Mexico. And so I'll start talking just a bit about how we got to where we are today. So I started with Citizen 6 years ago, and coming on board, one of my areas of expertise had always been to transition companies off of legacy systems into new ERPs. And so I was confronted with the challenge of bringing Citizen off of a legacy system that had been in place for 35 years on an AS400. We had many different systems connected to that AS400, some of them like Lotus Notes and things like that, that you just don't hear about anymore. But all of those systems needed to be replicated in some way in the ERP. The goal was that we don't lose any functionality, because over time we did become pretty robust even within platforms that we were on. And so I just started doing basically a survey and audit of all of the systems, and basically found out there were 11 systems just for master data alone, not even including some of the other things that we had going on. And so this was about product data and some customer information as well, but mainly product data. We did have on 11 different databases. And so everybody who would want to use it or look up information, they would be bouncing from one system to the next, logging into a different system. And it really was, what we found is that if the systems weren't maintained in the same way, we didn't have good data. We had one system that you go to for size of watch and another that you go to for web content. At this point is when I really realized that we need to have a single source to feed our ERP. And how do we get there? You know, we have thousands of watches, many thousands of spare parts, which this number has gone up that you're seeing 60,000 spare parts. It's much more than that now. We also knew that we had to manage multiple currencies and languages. And we had to have an ability to follow the product through basically the life cycle, even though it's not a life cycle management that we were looking for, but we did need to understand, like, how do we make sure that we have all the information on an item, and to like the size, the weight, so that the warehouse is going to have information in our WMS to accommodate the data, material data sheets, custom codes, pricing, initial pricing, and all of this. We needed to find a place to put it. And I didn't want to, and wouldn't really accept the thought of putting in 3 different systems to meet our needs. We had to find something that would accommodate all of the integration that we needed and meet our needs. So this is where we came up with, okay, how do we find a single source of truth? And it is a product information management system. You know, I got on when Brian was speaking, and he was talking about the digital acceleration. And if you don't have good data, if you have disparate systems, you are going to be in big trouble with, you know, managing it and making sure that what goes out to the public is pristine. And we did realize that early on that we had to find a way to stop the bad data that we had. The master data for our product was needing a lot of work. And so we had to go find a standardized software solution to provide this. What we were looking for is we needed something that was flexible, something that was simple, something that could be managed within my IT team as well as the business users. You know, we didn't want to get something that was so big and complicated that we couldn't figure out how to use it, and the end users would never use it either. So we really had to go through that. We had to find out. We knew that, you know, at the time when we were going moving to off of the legacy system for Citizen, we were also looking at Bulova, which was also on another legacy system on another AS400, that we knew that we were going to be bringing them on board as well. And so we had to look at something that was flexible, scalable, and we knew that we could bring our users up to speed pretty quickly and have them able to use it. So that was our challenge, and we really did a lot of looking and you know, talking with people and finding out what other people are using, and we came up with a solution that would provide the information that we needed. And this screen gives you kind of an overview. This is on our e-commerce platform for our direct to consumer. We also have another platform that is our actual, I call it an B2b, where we electronically provide information for our B2b customers as well, which they might see more watches on the page because they're going to be putting 5 in a box and not ordering one by one. Also, you'll see the product description on this, and that product description is also, that's for a customer, a consumer on a consumer platform. But it's also like there's different content that would be divvied out to our business to business platform. So we're able to provide different content based on the platform that we're providing the information to. And so that was something that we really did require. We didn't want to keep two different databases, one for our Salesforce platform and one for our business-to-business platform. We wanted to make sure we could keep everything in one spot, and so that's what we did. And so we worked with many different groups and companies to try to, get a statement of work and, based on what it was we thought we needed. And we finally did, we went through and said, okay, we need to have Amazon, which Brian also talked about. We need to understand how do we get them the proper information, because like he said, I mean, Amazon is definitely a source of information for everybody. Everybody goes there first, and we needed to be multinational, and we had to have omni-channel as well. We had to support our product development team and merchandising team. So even as we were, going through this, we knew that we needed their buy-in. And so this next bullet does tell you, we found a PIM, it's by Perfion, and we used this to basically get rid of those 11 systems that I talked about, as we began speaking today. We were able to say, okay, almost pushing it beyond, I think, even what they thought it should or could do. And, we've had it in place for about 3.5 years, and it's been able to do every single thing we've ever come up with. It feeds our business planning, our logistics, our inventory, our retail sales reporting for the stores, as well as it gives the business visibility. And I mentioned also on the first slide that we use it for our customs to make sure all that information is in there, so we have that updated. So what I did want to mention too about this platform that we chose, and I didn't find this with other companies that we spoke with. One of the things when we started out with the implementation of, once we made the decision on Perfion and we decided, started on the implementation, there was a really big concern in my company about we've got too much bad data. How do we ever get past that? And so we started off trying to maybe force it through and say, let's fix everything before we put it into Perfion. And working with Perfion, we realized, nope, let's put it in there. And then that is the tool that we actually used to clean up our data. And I think without that, we might still have been today still figuring out how do we get this data perfect. And not to say it's perfect today, we still have users and people looking at it, but how do we get our data cleaned up? And that's how we did it. And we had to get past that point of thinking we had to have perfect data to put into this system. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of the implementation, was just realizing we're just going to have to move forward and start cleaning the data once it's in the system. And we still have people today cleaning up data, so I think it's a really important part of a PIM being able to do that. During this time, we did put in the new ERP system, and as we brought other brands and division in, like Bulova, everything always started with Perfion. It's like, this is our single source of truth. We don't do anything without having everything in Perfion first. And now everybody in the company knows that. We don't even purchase anything product-wise that is not in Perfion. It all starts there. And holding to that governance and making people understand the value of it has been really very important. And it has just become a very important part of our business. And I did say to Rob when we were talking about this earlier, is that there's probably not a day goes by at Citizen Watch America where you don't hear something about Perfion, because everybody knows it has to start there. And that's been a very important part of our being able to use this for our multi-channels, and I think those are the points I wanted to make clear today. I've kind of gone past myself, so I'm not sure if there's any questions or any kind of clarification you might need, but I'd be open to that if you don't mind.
Yeah, the good news is, Trish, people want to ask questions of you. So I've already got a couple queued up. And
Okay.
it looks like, according to the flashing red on my screen, some more are coming in. The first question is, how much did you have to work on data, right? You talked about, you had to clean up data and that Perfion helped you, but why and how and how much?
Well, we had a lot of bad data. If you can imagine, I mean, we just didn't have things corrected. One thing I would say, we spent a great deal of time initially, and we worked very closely with Perfion, their implementer that worked with us, and also there was somebody on the IT team who is just very, very good at data and understanding database structures. So it wasn't just in a box that we did this. I mean, we worked really closely with Perfion, but as we had like maybe the same SKU across many databases, we had to decide what's going to be the good data, what's not. And Perfion did allow us to like choose, like maybe something's called pink, what rose gold and pink gold and all the different attributes you might have for an item. And we wanted to synchronize those, right? So we always wanted everything, if it's rose gold, it's rose gold. It's not going to be RS, GLD. It's going to be the same thing across, for every item that has that attribute. And so I would say we spent 3 months perhaps cleaning up our data. It was quite extensive.
Wow. All right. Actually, I as I see them come in, here's kind of a related follow-on question. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping to the back, folks. I'll get to your questions, but it seems overwhelming to have started this conversion process. How long did it take? And so you just said it took three months for really getting cleaned up, but what was I'll just add, what was your process and how long did these steps take?
So we probably started this about 6 months, maybe it was 9 months before we were going to go live with our Microsoft Dynamics Nav ERP. And so we started because we knew we had a lot of work to do, and we knew that this had to be the first place. And so we probably spent about 9 months getting it ready. Now, what happened, that was for our initial implementation of using the Perfion to update our ERP. After that, when we brought on other brands or divisions, we were able to streamline that because we had the structure in place. And maybe when we brought on Canada, we needed to add like another field, because obviously the French and French language and the Canadian currency. So those things, we implemented over time. It wasn't, I would say, I think it's quick by what it would have took us to try to integrate all those different systems into a new ERP. So building this out in comparison to that was a shortcut.
Well, now I'm jumping. This is all coming together, so I'm skipping a bunch of questions again, but a question came in. What made you decide that PIM must be leading instead of ERP, right? And you were just mentioning the integration piece, but I in my business get asked a lot, well, why can't I do this in an ERP, right? That's why I have an ERP. Why do I need a PIM? Maybe we phrase it that way.
That's a really good question, because I don't know, like I had never ever implemented one before at any other company I'd worked at. But I did realize, I mean, we are definitely a product driven company, and we are also feeding so much more than just our ERP. And, when we looked into the functionality of Microsoft Dynamics, it's really not a master data warehouse. I mean, it provides transactions, it's transactional. And so I really had to kind of think about this and think, what could we use? And I just started looking around online and seeing what other people are doing. And I didn't see anything quite as big as what we ended up doing, but I did see that, okay, why not? And at first I thought we could just build our own PIM. We could just get everything together in a single database, a SQL database, and manage this ourselves. But then when I started looking at, Perfion and several other products that I did check out, I realized, well, they can do so much more. And so why not? And let me go to the executive team and talk about it. You know, let's talk about how we can, you know, really drive all our other channels with this data, not just the ERP, because we needed it everywhere else too.
Oh, that's great. Now I'm going to go back to the front of the line, and that is someone asked, what is product syndication into Amazon? How does this PIM help you with Amazon? What exactly does that do, Trish?
I think it basically makes sure that their information is up to date. Obviously, you know, they have ways of going out and getting other information, so it's not always. But I would say this is not just for Amazon, for any of our other business customers. We can provide them clean, real data that they can use, and we know it's good, and we know it matches our brand, and it's, you know, signed off by our marketing team, and it gives that information.
Excellent. Here's someone asked, what was your selection criteria? What did it really have to do compared to, other things that you looked at?
Okay, so there are several things. First of all, we had to have flexibility and scalability. I didn't want something that every time I wanted to add another brand, I'm going to get another bill, you know, just to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to make sure that this is something that can grow with us as a company. And about creating attributes, I mean, we have a lot of attributes related to each one of our products. And so I didn't want to be limited for any reason that for you know, maybe you know, we have all our parts in the system. I wanted to be able to flex on those attributes. I wanted to be able to use it for, like I said, for the customs. You know, there's a portion of it that we actually do to calculate the gross profit on initial product. I mean, we had to be able to do all those things. And so that was really important. I didn't need a canned solution. So that's the thing about Perfion too. It is very customizable, and it's based on your criteria. I think that's also, it's the good news and the bad news. You also have to have some control and have governance, because if you let everybody put everything they want in there, eventually you're just going to end up where you were before with bad data. So we do have to govern it, and we have somebody on the IT team who really does hold it very close to her heart and takes very good care to make sure that we go through change control for any changes that we make to it, and make sure that every decision we make is the right one for the future, and not, we're not going to have a duplicate data in there. So we're very careful about that. But those were the basic, criteria. We also like the ability, like we can mass import data into Perfion, so we do the mass importing. And so like when we have the new product launches, we don't have to have somebody sitting in there typing away. They've already got their sheets that they're working on. We can mass import it, and we can export it as well. We could take it out and create Excel sheets or whatever we want to do. We needed that flexibility.
Excellent. So let me ask, how important was usability? That's another question that just came in, and how usable is it compared to other things you looked at?
So that was really important. We needed a way that we could really make sure the business would use it, and it wouldn't just become something that IT maintains. That's been every bit of our projects going forward since we started getting off of legacy systems. It was like, no more does IT manage the product information. We have to make sure this is a usable application that people understand, and they own it too, and they buy into it. And that was a very important part of this, because so oftentimes you get things that are so complicated, you really can't even, the business is just too big of a learning curve. And so that was very important for this. And I know that Perfion was very patient with us, because they were in a lot of meetings with our users, and we just kept going back and forth and saying, okay, wait, how do we make this easier? How do we make sure that people are doing this correctly and they know the right thing to do? And on a recent upgrade, we were the ones in IT that would do the mass updates, but now we do have a limited amount that people in the business can do on their own, and they're loving it. They're able to really own it. They don't have to wait and open a ticket and maybe wait 3 or 4 days until it gets up in the queue for IT. And so the users using the system is key.
Oh, great. Here's the question then that goes on to that, right? Can you provide any results about ROI and what to expect when implementing this kind of system?
You know, I did do an ROI analysis some time ago, and really our return on this was being able to get rid of other systems that we were also paying licensing fees on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was really through that I could, you know, actually go to the accounting team and say, this is what we're saving. As far as like, as we move forward and as we use it now, I mean, there's no way we would have the systems we have now with the data that we do if we did not have this. And so I don't know, you know, going forward now, it's just a part of us doing business. But initially, it really was. We saved a lot, and over time, you know, it wasn't like day one everything got fed by Perfion. It happened over time. Initially, it was NAF, and then, you know, an API to our B2b and our e-commerce solution. And so we started little by little, and basically all the time we're looking at how else can we use it? How else can we, you know, what else can we get rid of? You know, is there anything else out there that's not being fed by Perfion that should be?
Okay, so it seems like you rolled this out in pieces, but here's a good question that follows on that one, and that is, how did you sell it internally? Everyone wants to know, how do you go to your management and get their interest? Obviously, you had an accounting approach, but what did you have to do to sell this to management?
That's a good question. And so I don't think anybody in management really realized the value of this. And a lot of times people will say, well, if you got 11 databases, who cares? It's all working right. But I think it was identifying the problems and really putting that out there and saying, this is the problem that we have, and this is how much money we're paying to support that problem instead of trying to find a solution. And I do think I went through many iterations and discussions with, you know, at the time, and Rob, I talked to you about this, when I started, I was a vice president of IT for Citizen Watch. And so I came in, you know, with really the task before me to get us off legacy. And there had to be that kind of conversation as well. If we're going to get off legacy, then we're not going to be pulling data for our website from a Lotus Notes database that's on an AS400. We have to start, you know, being nimble. You know, we want to accelerate our digital, which we've been talking about for years at Citizen, you know, and if we're going to do that, we have to be nimble. We have to have good data. And it was basically, and then getting buy-in from marketing and the product development team, everybody. Basically, once they saw it, they were like, oh my gosh, the light went on. This is what we need. And so I brought in the other people in the business and, you know, had them see the vision as well. And that helped us move it forward too.
Oh, fantastic. Here's another question. Do you consider Perfion to be your product MDM? Let me throw out some definitions for the audience. MDM is Master Data Management. PIM is Product Information Management, and DAM is Digital Asset Management. But do you consider Perfion to be your MDM, Trish?
All right, so I do. We also do have a DAM, just so you know. That is for our digital asset management, and Perfion does not handle our digital assets. We have a DAM, and it's fed with an API from Perfion, and Perfion gets digital assets back to it. The DAM's been in place, but the DAM is also available to our customers. They use it for their advertising and that type of thing, their media. But I do consider it a product data management system as well, because for our product, it is the single source of truth, and it is where we manage all data. There's nothing that would not go through there.
Wow. All right, excellent. Next question is around user adoption. The question is, user adoption is critical. Do you have any recommendations on how to get your team on board with all these changes in processes and the new ways of doing things? I'll add, it also sounds like you have users outside of IT, right? And that's got to be one of the benefits. So how do you get everyone working off that same page?
I think that how we started this was really about communication. We had to talk about it over and over again and not give up, right? If you believe in it and you know this is how you have to go and how you need to do, you know, move forward as a company, you have to talk about it. You have to have the lunches where you sit there and go through it and people are scratching their heads, because a lot of people most people aren't that technical, quite honestly. And so at first it kind of looks, I think it was, daunting, like, oh my gosh, how do we ever get all our data in there and how's it going to work? And I know Hans Hendrik came out from Denmark many times to work with this on it. He worked with our business team, and it was a conversation about, we had to internalize this. We had to make it part of, this is what we're going to do, and let's work together. And if you don't understand it, ask another question. Also, Shirley on my team, who's been in charge of implementing this, there's, even today, there's never ever a moment that we won't have people in a room and say, let's go through this together and let's take a look at it. And working together and, showing the product, Perfion, and just continuing to communicate is, I think that's one of the key parts of this.
Oh, that's great. There's another question. Okay. Can you give me an example of, first, how this data is integrated into your other data, and two, what type of analysis did this data help you accomplish that wasn't done before?
Okay, so I'll tell you how this works for us. So when we start having a concept of a product, it starts getting set up in Perfion. And this, I hope this answers the question. If not, the person who asked it can, come back around. But what happens is in Perfion, the product development team starts setting up the product. And then there's a lot of information that has to go in there once we get the samples back and we understand how it's going to work, and we start looking at gross profit, what are we going to sell it for, that type of thing. And then there's basically a check mark that says, okay, this is ready. And so every night the system goes out and looks for the check mark. And if something is in Perfion that has the check mark, it actually goes then into nav. And so that means that we can actually buy that product, and we can also start, marketing it to other areas. Jim, what was the second question, Rob?
And what type of analysis did all this data help to accomplish that wasn't done before?
I think it's the consistency that we were able to get from having all this data in one spot. We no longer had to, like, we did have like this gross profit calculator that was on the AS400 that was, that was built with COBOL code back in the day, and it actually worked. But what happened is we're bringing in different products, and having something that we could maintain in one spot was really important. And so I think that the ability to see everything in one place is really what changed things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I guess there's got to be some benefit of entry once, right? I'm always a big fan of that. Instead of sticking it in your AS400 and then putting everything else together. Okay, we've got another question, and that is, how did you find Perfion? Were you specifically looking for a PIM provider? I remember in your talk you were saying you kind of went out there and just started looking, but how did you find this?
It's really funny because I was going through my notes back from when I first started. I was wondering myself, like, how did I ever come up with Perfion? And based on what I found, I think I was really just out there on the internet looking. I don't even know if I thought I needed a product information management system, but I was thinking, how do I get all these databases combined, consolidated? And I really don't remember how I came upon Perfion. And I do remember, though, going through the process and really talking extensively with them for some time, because, whenever you're doing something like this and it's outside and you're being a champion for it in your company, you want to make sure you're making a good decision. And I didn't want to come forward, I was new to the company as well when I was working on this, and I wanted to make sure I was coming through with a viable product. And there was a lot of unknowns I didn't know about. I wasn't sure about how do we support this? Who supports it? When I have a call, 3 in the morning and something's not working, how's that all going to do? And some of that was unknown, and it was just about, speaking with the people at Perfion that kind of got me that comfort zone. But I don't really remember. Like, I don't think I had a request for proposal that went out to a big group of PIMs. I think it was basically just doing some pecking around and finding it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting to me since I'm involved in the industry, because here's a great question that I think many people are asking that just came in, and that is, were you familiar with PIM before meeting Perfion? Great question.
I really was not. I worked my job before this. I had transitioned a company off of a very old legacy system into SAP, and so I was familiar like with the MDM that comes with SAP, and something more along those lines. So I knew that we needed something that would consolidate our data, but I really wasn't familiar with it.
Interesting. I personally find that PIM is just not a widely used word here in the United States with our customers, and so it doesn't really surprise me that you might not have thought of PIM and found out what that was. All right, I've got another question here. Right, you talked about moving in chunks. So this question is, what did you try to tackle first with Perfion, and then second?
The first thing we wanted to do, we had to get all the watches, if we had inventory on them, we had to get them into the database. And so that's where we started with, and I don't think initially it was parts. I mean, obviously we have many, many more parts than watches, but we basically started with this mass import of our watches. And from there we went to parts. And if I had one of my technical people on the call, they might be better able to tell me what, every single thing we do with it now, because maybe we also sell, or not sell, but we give displays to stores and that type of thing. I'm not sure if those are in there yet, or maybe that'll be the next thing. But we basically started with the huge input of watches, and anything that we had in inventory we had to have in there, because it was going to be part of our nav implementation.
Oh, it sounds like you were doing them both together, implementing Microsoft Dynamics Nav and Perfion side by side, or did one precede the other?
No, yeah, we were doing it all together. It was part of a major project. So we were basically we had to have the PIM in place we didn't really put the PIM, we didn't have Perfion connect our AS400. The whole goal of it was to have it connect to Nav once we got Nav up. And so our cutover, part of our cutover plan for the ERP was to make sure we could load all the data. All the data had to be there from Perfion into Nav. So as we loaded the general ledger and everything else, we could have the product in there and understand that it was, ready to be placed on an order. And then we also then integrated it with our warehouse management system, which is Manhattan Scale. And so then it also had to go down to Scale. And so this was a major, we basically pulled the rug out from underneath the company, and we changed all of our systems.
Yeah, that's a pretty unusual approach, Trish, to let's tackle it all at once. So let me ask you a question, and that is, how important was it, the native integration API back and forth between Perfion and Microsoft?
It was very important. The fact Perfion basically is like I've said a couple times, is the source of the truth. Mm-hmm. There's very little that comes back from Nav to Perfion. Most of Perfion is the pristine example of everything, So I'll give another example. So in our warehouse, I discovered maybe about 10 months ago that in the warehouse they were updating Manhattan Scale with the DIMs for our product, dim weight, all that. And so what was happening though is that Perfion didn't know that information, and so we kind of just stopped everything and said, wait a minute, Perfion needs to be the source of the truth. So even the warehouse team were trained how to use Perfion. They update there, and then now we have a trigger that sends those dim weights down into Scale, so that we maintain that single source of the truth. And that's been critical. And I never thought it would be a good idea to have the warehouse input something in Scale and have it go back and update Perfion. We just needed to make sure they knew how to use Perfion. They could put the information in there. It's very user friendly. I don't think there's been any problem with that at all. And they update it. It flows down into our warehouse management system, and there you go. We're fine.
Wow. You know, Trish, I'm obviously pretty familiar with the systems, but it sounds to me like you have a pretty unique implementation in that you just said you have your warehouse and inventory you're running through Perfion and then distributing out, as opposed to using disparate systems and plugging it in to Perfion. You know, why did you decide to do that?
I don't know, from my experience, I just felt like this was the way that we need to move forward. I felt like this, as I looked at the big plan and that, if you saw the diagram of our systems prior to where we are today, it was mind numbing. And this is going to simplify everything. I knew that. And we just had to basically do the work, and it was hard work. I mean, it was 4th of July, I guess, 2017, where we put NAV into place, and everything started working, and we started just peeling off the layers of legacy. And we've been doing that now for 3 years, just peeling away all the layers of the legacy systems, and it's paying off.
Wow. That is fantastic. Really, really appreciate you joining us. I don't see any new questions. I'm speaking slowly just in case you want to sneak one in. Trish, we appreciate it. I do also have some polls, right, that we didn't get to because we got a little bit behind. So I'm going to move into polling. Thank you, Trish. Trish is the CTO of Citizen Watch. We really appreciate your time and really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And if anybody has any questions they direct to you, Rob, you can definitely send them my way, okay?
Great, I appreciate that. We actually did have a question about that if there was a contact, and I wasn't going to broach that until I talked to you offline, but fantastic. So
yeah, I don't mind it at all. I would love to. We're passionate about this product, and we're passionate about the system that we put in place. And I love to share the story.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. She offered, I didn't. And you please forward them on to us and we'll connect. Thank you again, Trish, so much for your time.
So what is search? Why is it the secret to success, right? So a lot of folks start with the thought that if I just get my products up on a website and I have a shopping cart and they can buy things, that's the end. Well, the truth is, in B2B, the number of SKUs, the amount of information contained on these websites is really large. And that's been a theme of the webinars that we've been hosting. And I encourage you to go take a look at the website and see a little bit of previous talks about data in particular. But when you've got that much data, when you've got information, and particularly in business-to-business transactions, whether you're a manufacturer, a distributor, what really happens is it gets hard to find things, and that will frustrate your customers. So let me just share some quick facts, right? So if someone is coming to your website and they are searching directly, they're skipping browsing, they're going right into search, they are much more likely to convert, right? They have a specific thing they're looking for. And that means that at that point in the marketing funnel, they're at the buy portion, right? So they're 7 to 10 times more likely to convert. A lot of times, and it's important, right? People come to your website to research products, to be able to look at options and alternatives and get information. And certainly your e-commerce websites are there for that. But when they actually come and begin to search, that means they're ready to buy. And although they may only make up on average 25% of the users on your site at a time, and browsers are 75% on average, the truth is that search folks are making up to 80% of your online revenue when they're searching. So that's a big deal. Now, here's the problem. The problem fact is that when you have poor parameters, poor data, and poor information, 10 to 25% of all searches end on a no results page. No results means no buying. It means frustration, and it means that nothing is going to happen. So what is search, right? Let's just get a grounding on what is it and how does it work, right? So search is more than just the bar at the top. What it really is a set of, it can be a set of AI at the very top end. It can be a set of categories set usually on the left-hand side. It can essentially be your search engine of your sites. And most of us don't have Google or Amazon running our sites. So this is where it's important to really bring your insight into the behavior of your customers. This is one way you can really optimize search, is because you need to understand your customers. What do they normally search for? And how do they enter things into your search bar? That can really transform the experience for your customers. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. But let's talk about who's who, right? So I do both B2B and B2C. So let's take a look at who's your typical browser. Well, they're often motivated by sale or some sort of incentive, right? And they're looking to just browse, usually for a deal. Right now, in a business-to-business transaction, that can also be quarterly driven. It can be, in this case, during COVID, right? It can be for particular supplies. It can be a just-in-time order. But they're generally, here's the real thing. They're making comparisons. And the whole point is that they're looking. And this is where often, right, they're searching by categories. And that's why I've got categories highlighted on the upper left, because they're going to go look at, we have a customer that sells cell phone accessories to stores nationwide to sell to consumers. Well, they might be looking for a particular set of cases or a deal that you're preparing to sell. Now, before I leave this sell season, right, what are we entering? Well, there's a lot of liquidity in the market, and there's a lot of pent-up demand as people in the United States are coming out of COVID. So as you as a manufacturer or distributor, how will you respond to incoming orders, because it's getting to be holiday season? And I suspect every retailer is already ramping that forward cautiously. We really don't know what this is going to look like. And so I'm going to make a prediction, which is always difficult, but we're going to continue to see e-commerce and last-minute ordering more than before. And I'm not talking about on the consumer side. I'm going to be talking from your retailers and from your own customers. Now, who's the searcher? Well, the searcher is someone looking for something very, very specific. And you can see a great example here, right? Mirrorless cameras, right? And they want kit lenses. They're looking for full frame. And so what you see is an opportunity of not only using the search bar, but actually beginning to refine that search within the left-hand search bar so that we could look for specific manufacturers and specific sensors and other appropriate criteria. And what that does is it gets it down faster for the searcher to be able to find what they're looking for. So why do we want to do this, right? So here's the good news, right? This is what happens when you do better search for average websites, right? Now, here's the truth. B2B generally converts much higher than this because they generally aren't doing as much comparison as consumers. But I don't have good data because it's very customer specific and it's very industry specific. So I stuck here with more of a consumer side. So let me give you some specifics not on the slide about consumer websites. Consumer websites actually generally convert at 1%. Very, very good sites do 2 to 5%. So what is happening is speed, which is one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later. Speed is what gets you from that 1% conversion to the 2% conversion to the 3% conversion. Why is speed so important, and why is search so important? If you think about it, simply doubling the number of people who come to your website, it's really hard, particularly in B2B. Acquiring customers is very expensive. But if you make an investment to simply convert the customers visiting your website as is, from say 3% to 5%, you have essentially doubled the effectiveness of your website. And you'll often see a revenue lift in the area of 20% from search. Now, what is that doing? That means you're capturing your other folks' business. We're going to talk about why it is that you're actually able to capture comparison buyers. So a good search solution is also going to collect some information. We're going to talk about that. Concrete data, right, about what of your products are more popular or less popular. A lot of people do not use search in this way. In other words, everyone knows what their best sellers are, but looking at the stuff that you don't have, or what are they searching in terms of, what are they searching for in terms of product selection that you don't have. So that's going to be the customers in terms of wishing what you sold. And if you think about that, if they're coming to your website and searching for those things, the likelihood is they thought about it from one of your competitors. And they're looking for a price comparison or a quote, or even potentially, right, in areas where inventory becomes a real bottleneck, then they're looking for alternate supply, or potentially to create multiple sources of supply because of various supply chain restrictions, right? As we begin to think as an industry about how do we actually do multiple sourcing, right? So much of our time previously has been about MFN pricing, about making sure that we understand how to buy most effectively and to really take advantage of quantity. How many folks actually wound up really critically hurt because of the supply chain interruption with China in particular? And for example, I live in Houston, Texas. The port of Houston virtually shut down. It's the number 3 largest port in America, and it of course wasn't able to receive a number of things, or that got slowed down because of a variety of reasons for COVID. So suddenly, alternate supply is becoming a very big thought process again. Now, this will take a while, but you can gain insight into what people are looking for based on what are they searching for on your site. Is there a way to introduce new products? Right, one of the things we had in a previous webinar a while ago was Trish Keller, and she mentioned that they really use product information data in order as part of their new product development process. Now that's an interesting use of data by Citizen Watches. If there aren't enough searches and your inventory is rising, that is a leading indicator that there may have been a switch in the industry. So there's a lot of data we can grab from search, not just satisfying customer need. Okay, what are some of the marketing benefits? Well, if you're thinking about search, guess what they're searching for on Google? If they're searching on your website, they're searching on Google as well. They're searching for exactly what they're looking for. And doing SEO based on search, based on variable data, can be very, very difficult. It's not impossible, but of course it takes time. On the other hand, if you're seeing a growing search on your website, or reverse, if you're seeing search in Google for particular things around analytics, you will be able to more accurately target for income. The second thing is, how should you display, right? We're going to talk about that, and actually you're going to see a very good example in our case study that Tom will be talking about. You can also make sure to provide alternative suggestions, right? Wherever you have a blank, make sure you're providing an alternative. There are companies that do this very, very well, right? And one of the other things that we've talked about is syndication. So syndication is when I go out to the B2B marketplaces. So Amazon has a B2B marketplace, Alibaba has a B2B marketplace, even other specific industries have a B2B marketplace, right? Now, why does Amazon have such a huge advantage? And I can tell you it's actually because of their search capability. They don't actually sell or make, I should say, or stock almost any of the B2B things except office supplies. What they do is provide a very powerful search engine for people to actually find you. And if any of you have used Alibaba for your business, as I have, you know that finding things is not a competitive advantage of Alibaba. Their competitive advantage is selection. Now, wading through it to find it takes perseverance. Persona development is also the last piece, right? If you begin to attach search to your specific customers, you'll learn more about your customers. Now, I'm not going to take you down the rabbit trail of persona development because that is a completely separate and large topic all by itself. So what are some best practices, right? First of all, B2B websites are content heavy. If you're displaying 250,000 SKUs or 1 million SKUs or more, by definition, you are content heavy. The second thing is that B2B websites contain more attributes, more selection, more technical details than a retail site does. And therefore, again, it's content heavy. It also tends to have things like assemblies or kitting that a retail site would not. Search is really important. But how do you make sure people understand your search? Get that search box on every single page. And I prefer center. It can be on the right. The only thing is checkout page. I'm not going to talk about checkout today because, again, that's a science in and of itself. But never, ever distract someone from buying something as they check out. I might give a teaser to another webinar, which is we're going to be talking about complex buying and complex buying solutions for B2B specifically, with an awesome case study being presented by a very large national distributor. Okay. The next thing is to actually place text in that search box to encourage searches. And you've probably seen this and you're going to see it. Putting in search text such as product name or search here or any of those kinds of things, typically in a masked back fashion, encourages people to type there. The only problem is don't make them delete that text. That should be automatically removed so that they can actually move forward with search immediately. Now, again, in B2B, you have a set of very experienced buyers. Those buyers may actually know your product codes. They may know UPC codes. They may have industry terms, and they may have brand or manufacturer terms. Therefore, search needs to encompass all of those kinds of things so that they can search the way they want to. Just like a retail brand It's really about enabling your customer to find the things the way that they think about it. And that's why successful search for large and complex B2B websites allows you to very quickly hone in, filter, and describe, and then and get down to the set of products and comparisons that they're really looking for. And what that does is it really creates a much better user experience. Okay, now here's the problem, right? As we go through and we begin to do these things, 34% of the top 50 e-commerce sites. Now, that is the top 50 sites. They get the most volume and they get the most traffic, and they don't return useful results when there is a misspelling. Error tolerance for typos is hard to do, but really important. And if you think about it, Google does it really well, Amazon does it really well. So how do you do that for B2B? And so what I suggest is alternative spellings, obvious mistakes, and you can actually program these into your search parameters as part of understanding how do people think about it. Now, the next problem is, of course, acronyms aren't misspellings. These are typical things that you would want to make sure you have in your product descriptions so that your search can pick those up. So queries. Autocomplete gives people the ability to actually see what it is they're looking for as they type. It does two things. First of all, it makes you think the website is faster than it is. Speed is important, but being able to autocomplete on the fly creates a sense that the website is extremely fast and therefore makes them much more likely to remain on it. Specific queries allow you to also guide consumers into things that are probably the most relevant to what they want. And they know that as they continue to type, those autocompletes will change. So start by presenting the most likely things, and they will self-refine into the deeper options if they're looking for something more specific than the popular ones. Showing potential matches, however, with your popular items gets people to those items faster, and it's probably, odds are, what they're looking for. Now, one other thing is begin to allow autocompletes and searches within either departments or product codes or manufacturers or particular items or groupings, right? So that they can better refine things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the examples. But what you'll find is in highly complex, high SKU websites, someone knows that they're looking for a particular type of hardware. In the case of, say, MRO, they probably are as an intelligent buyer, which almost all your visitors will be, right? They're very driven to a specific answer. They'll be very willing to click left on hardware or begin the search and then refine by the type of hardware. And you need to be able to do both, right? So when someone's clicked on the left, you refine the search automatically. And if they've started by typing and then click on the left, you refine again. So what are the best practices, right? Using analytics will really help you begin to understand your search better. What are your top performing queries? What are your top performing products based strictly on clicks and traffic? So if you look at, and that is going to be necessarily separate from what your best selling products are, right? So if you're getting a top performing product based on clicks, but it's not one of your top revenue items, then you may want to look at the description or the information you're being provided. Does it compare as well or with enough information compared to your competitors, for example? Then also, what are your top performing products based on conversion, meaning they actually bought it? Make sure you do not have areas that are a no search result. The other thing you really want to begin to track is how many filters does it take someone to find something on your site? That's a good indicator of your free-form search, of your language-driven search, in terms of how good is it. So if people are using more than 5 filters, you've either got a huge catalog, or you may really want to look at what is your search capability in your search bar. Now, one of the most important things is mobile. I worked with a major retail health foods and health improvement website out in Florida last year, and they were able to successfully merge their company with another large one that's one of the largest retailers in America. What they did is focus on mobile, right? Now, what's the number one change in demographics in B2B? And that is that millennials are becoming and driving the buyers, right? So often we sat at our desks, but as we become a more mobile workforce, and certainly as we're working from home, mobile has to become one of the key things that you begin to think about in terms of your B2B website. And so on mobile, right, the view may be limited to 1 or 2 products per screen, per look, right? On your laptop, that may have dozens of products. So you may be able to scroll through things very quickly. So what you really have to do is optimize differently on mobile than you do on anything in terms of a desktop experience. And what you'll find is that probably one of the most valuable things to do is called faceted search. Now, faceted search is a really fancy name for filters. So faceted search leads to a 20% increase in conversion rates on mobile, right? So if I can find the right set of filters or facets, right, that drive people on my B2B website. Often that might be manufacturer. It's often size and weight, quantity. Those kinds of things are at a minimum. But you have your own things that make sense to you and your customers in your B2B searches. Start thinking mobile. Now, oh, I forgot one thing. I mentioned app and PWA. I didn't cover that. So PWA, what is a PWA? That is a progressive web application. What that is a set of code that makes your browser look like, act like, and be as fast as an app. It tends to be more powerful than an app. Apps, however, are powerful when you need downloaded search. Now, not a lot of people need that, but often, since I'm here in Houston, oil or field-driven activities need apps because of connectivity. And that can be a competitive advantage because the speed is instantaneous, the data is downloaded to the tablet or phone, and it gives you a huge competitive advantage because people can find, look, get the information, compare it, size it, well out at, for example, an oil rig or a remote service location or somewhere in the middle of Texas that has pretty lousy cell service, which I seem to find all the time. You can use the app to solve that. PWAs take your website and turn it into a progressive web app that that is extremely fast. In fact, it's near instant. What it does is it limits, on the other hand, the amount of information delivered at a time to the phone, but it will increase your speed dramatically. Let's see. So summary. Here we are. Sorting options. Extremely important to help your people find what they're looking for. Technical descriptions, having them in your website isn't only important in terms of as a picture. It really needs to be there in text so that your search bar can find it. Photos. Tagging your photos and supplying them with your search is important, not just for SEO typically, but because it actually will allow you to provide photos as they roll over pieces of search, which actually can be more useful than just the words themselves. Search users are far more likely to buy, and they are typically the majority of your revenue. This is why search really is the magic ROI. Once you're online, it's all about how do you convert. And that is, I think, the frontier we're really going to be talking about in 2021 as so many B2B companies are coming online. So I know we're going to have just a little bit of, I've used a lot of my allotted time, but I did want to make a free offer from eAllies, right? I have a crawling tool, right? It's automatic. I'm happy to give anyone who emails me a free assessment. Just send me your website and your contact info, and I'll email back you its automatic results, as well as some suggestions on your search speed strategies.
I don't know how far in the story I got before I dropped out, but essentially I was unable to get the help finding the screw I needed at the big box retailer, and I jumped in my car, went to the local hardware store. The sales guy that I've worked with there before gave him the information. He immediately looked it up, got me the screw I needed, and I was on my way. I share that story because it really reminds me of search. If you think about search, search is the sales associate in a retail store. I don't care if you're a B2B or a B2C business. If you have a need of the type that I described, and you're looking for something specific, it's really the sales associate in a store that helps you. It's really the search in a website that helps you find that. And you're going to go, I've determined I'm not going back to the big box retailer ever unless it's not carried in my local hardware store, because I can get in and out and I can get the help that I need, and I can place and make that order and be happy. Well, that kind of leads us into the story of Xander's, because that's really what their story is all about. And there were two factors in that story. One was when I walked into that big box retailer, it took me a while to get any kind of help. And then once I got help, the help was pretty useless. It was showing me an aisle with about 10,000 of that same item on it and no further help as to how to get there. First, a little bit of background on these guys. It's a sporting goods distributor, but it's really focused primarily in the gun industry. So it's guns, accessories around guns, accessories around camping and hiking and those kinds of things. They've got about 30,000 dealers and about 53,000 SKUs around the country that they serve. They're one of the largest in their industry, one of the top 3 in the United States, and they have a tremendous amount of volume in terms of daily traffic to their website and also direct through their APIs. When we got there, this was sort of the situation. They had a number of hand-coded, very customized APIs into their ERP system. They connected that up both directly to their customers as well as through Magento into their e-commerce. Their e-commerce was very, very slow. It was still running on Magento 1.6, and it was also very, very limited in terms of what data was available, because the only data that could be shared was the data that was stored and kept in Elliott. Elliott is an older sort of legacy AS400 system that had very limited amounts of data available. So descriptions were limited, digital assets were limited, everything around that was really limited. And of course, they had no PIM, and obviously no way to build relationships between products. So we actually had to work with them in sort of a phased-in manner in order to bring them from where they were to where they wanted to go. So the first thing that we did was we deployed a PIM solution to assist and enable them with the tools that they need in order to create more data, more information around their products, in order to be able to have more search phrases, search words that then could link to a product. We had to integrate that into both their Magento and their Elliott ERP system on the back end. And then we had to be able to go in and we had to create a situation where we could analyze all of the things that actually happen with their shopping cart. While that says abandonment, it's actually much, much more than that. We did an analysis of how long people stay on their website. We did an analysis of what it is that they actually put into those search phrases. We did an analysis of how long it takes to get that information back. We did analysis of if they buy a particular product, what other products that are unique to that, for instance, cases, ammo, other associated things, are they purchasing alongside that? And then, of course, finally, we moved and created that entire environment for their new website, still in Magento 1.6, however, on a new website. There were a couple of things that happened when we did that, and then I'll go back and talk about phase two. The first thing that happened is that their marketing team suddenly had the ability to describe and to show their products much more fully, including things like 360-degree images, including things like extended descriptions, including things like what are the additional things that when you purchase this particular product, you may want to purchase alongside it. So some related things right there in the product description. And that was a good start. We also improved the speed as much as it could be improved in their old Magento environment, but significantly enough that it had a big impact in terms of customer satisfaction. We then launched into phase two. And what we did in phase two, and guys, it looks like I'm getting a note that I lost you again. Are you still there?
Still here.
Still here. Okay, sorry. I occasionally get this little thing that pops up here on my screen that says my internet is having a problem, and I just wanted to make sure I was still live. Okay. So what we did in phase two is we actually upgraded the product to Magento 2. We also created a mobile theme and a mobile app, and this is something that Rob had just mentioned. Many of the folks that are the dealers like to be able to walk around their store, and as they're walking around their store and shop and see what it is that they're missing, they can enter that directly from a mobile app. And then finally, the biggest item in this that we worked on in phase two is the related and replacement capabilities, which I actually include in my mind as part of being able to do advanced and predictive search and other search related items. Related and replacement capabilities is the ability that at the point where I'm saying I'm going to purchase 3 or 4 of these handguns, I automatically have generated, based on the things that other people have done in the past, I have generated a page that says, Well, these are your top, let's say that's a handgun. These are your top potential holsters. This is your best ammo, second best ammo, and third best ammo to go along with that. This is a cleaning kit that's great for that particular gun. So all of the things that are sort of ancillary to that. The replacement part of that is, gee, we don't have that. Before that, if we don't have that, guess what the customer does? Well, we jump off and we go to the next distributor who hopefully has that or may have that, and we order from them. No, now it doesn't say we don't have that. Now it says this is on back order. However, if you want it right away, here's a similar gun or a similar tool or a similar, because they sell everything, a similar piece of clothing. So in short, all of a sudden, you're capturing traffic that otherwise is leaving you, and you're keeping it with you, and having them continue on your website. And that's what we did in phase 2. And as we did that, we saw another significant uptick in revenue in particular. We started working with these folks about 2 years ago. Revenue since that time has actually increased dramatically, and we'll talk about that here after we talk about phase 3. So once we were done with that, we said, okay, now we need to make it the most performant site out there in your industry. So already with the improvement in moving it to Magento 2, a significant performance enhancement had occurred. And we have to think about the fact that they had a very, very slow site at one point. So this made a huge impact on customers. We then decided we were going to move that website to the AWS cloud. And by doing that, we were going to create the auto-scaling capabilities required in order for them really to be able to scale as users scaled, because they have very high peaks and some very low valleys in terms of when people come on, how much they order, and most importantly, how many simultaneous orders might occur, and large orders. Oftentimes, their orders are in the 7 figures on individual orders. We then also went in and began developing the search, and particularly the predictive search capabilities. So there's layers, or what I would call individual pieces to that search capability. The first one we've already talked a little bit about, and that first piece of it is really the ability to use whatever analytics you already have inside of your company, and that in their case came in 2 ways. It came from analytics we were able to gather from their historic website as to what people were doing, when they were doing it, and what they were looking for. But the second piece actually came from their sales organization. So they have some people that have been with their company since the 1970s. They have been aware of everything that everybody has bought for years and years and years. They have a ton of institutional knowledge trapped inside of those people within their organization about what people really want when they put a specific search phrase into the search engine, about how that can be divided into classes and groups and categories, about what are all of the different attributes that you might want to be able to sort that by, about what the related and replacement items actually are that could work with that. And so as we developed their search capabilities, it became really a partnership, an alliance between our 2 companies to go in there and to uncover all of these things that historically, if one of these guys left, he walked out with quite a bit of knowledge. But now we were able to capture that, and we were able to incorporate it, A, into the PIM data that was being collected, as you do with the Perfion solution. We were able to, B, incorporate it into not just what you could search for, but then also the order and the dynamic way in which you would display that when you searched for it. So where historically somebody could have put in, and we actually had examples of this, where somebody would put in a search phrase that should return, as an example again, a handgun, and instead it returned a whole bunch of accessories, and you had to go to the third or fourth page before the first handgun even showed up for that particular search phrase. Well, when you do that, the people don't stay. They've already moved on. Doesn't mean they didn't buy anything. They probably searched for some other things they needed there, but that particular piece of the sale, that particular piece, that went to another distributor that potentially had a better search where they could find it quicker. Well, nobody has a better search anymore. The other thing historically that was problematic in the search capabilities was this delay, or this time that Rob talked about, where you see the little spinner going and you're waiting as the product thinks. So we put some search optimization techniques and tools into place. Again, now that we knew what a particular search meant, we were able to code some things to allow that spinning wheel to virtually become non-existent. And the return on the searches is instantaneous. It's literally sub-second in terms of what happens there. So when we talk about advanced predictive search capabilities, when we talk about that, particularly in this case, we're just scratching the surface. And that's why I wrote here phase one, right? Phase one is really just taking the institutional knowledge and putting it in there. But guess what? There's underlying analytics in place now underneath all of this search that is tracking in real time what are customers actually doing? What are they, and automating that process. What are they looking for? Did they find it? What percentage of the time did they find it on this phrase? And by finding it, that means they put it in their basket and they went on. Or by not finding it, they didn't put it in their basket. Or worse, they didn't even click on any of the results, which means we actually have a mismatch between what's being searched and what folks are looking for. And as we automate that and we get these reports, we can then apply AI engines to those reports. And of course, this is a long-term process, but over the course of, initially a year or two, but over time, 3 to 5 years, this thing becomes a self-improving, self-capable site to continually improve what the search result is that a customer gets, and to hone in more and more on what each individual customer is actually looking for. In short, it becomes that sales associate, because as I type in an attribute, or I type in a phrase, or I type in anything, it's learned that more than likely what I'm looking for is actually this particular screw for this particular vent cover. And it can tell me exactly where it is on a website with 53,000 products that I would otherwise potentially get lost in. So this is just an example of that. So as we take a look at this, we're looking at binoculars in this particular case. We've put in a search. We've looked for particular binoculars. In this case, or in all cases actually on their website, we hide out of stock items. However, at any point in time, they can click here and actually bring those out of stock items in as well, because they do get an awful lot of dealers that are okay with ordering the out of stock items. It's just, that's not the first thing that we want to show when they get there. As you look over on your left-hand side, and I didn't even know this had a name, I think of it as categories. Rob gave it a name that I've now forgotten already, but you have this name, this sidebar to help you further refine this particular search. So I found the binoculars that I put in, and now I'm going to go through and I want to reduce my search by color, by finish, by manufacturer. I want to reduce it by the magnification power, the materials. All of these things that I have rich access to because they exist inside of my PIM, and that I know because of the way that I've built out my search engine with the institutional and the knowledge from analytics that I've gathered, that these are all of the ways that folks are going to, in fact, search for this particular type of item that I sell on my website. So the important thing then is that we need to be thinking in terms of what does that mean from a results point of view, right? What did that mean to Xander's? Well, in Xander's case, in 2 years, there's been a threefold increase in revenue from the time that we started, and 99% of their revenue comes through the website and through the APIs, both of which are run off of this same system. So a threefold increase in revenue, and very little of their traffic is done by phone order. A 35% reduction in time associated with product management. So historically, they had to pull this data into directly Magento. Magento gave them very limited capabilities, but very hard to use capabilities to make some changes inside Magento itself to the data that was coming out of the Elliott system. And so what they were now able to do was pull it directly into the PIM system, and using the PIM system like Perfion, they were able to make updates, make changes. They were able to add descriptions. They were able to add 360-degree images. They were able to add other images. They were able to print off spec sheets for customers that may need spec sheets in order to get an even tighter view of the product, or to have it on hand when their customers walk into their shops. So there's a tremendous amount of capability that was delivered, but also what they found out was their marketing team was spending 35% less time doing all of these things. So they were doing more, and they were doing it in less time, because it's a simple drag and drop, point and click user interface that any user can learn how to use. Page load speeds went from 5 to 10 seconds. I told you guys earlier that they had really, really bad page load speeds when we began, and I meant it. And they've dropped to sub-0 second response times. Search abandonment. So there's two kinds of abandonment that happen. One was search abandonment, one was shopping cart abandonment. Now, in their case, it was actually fairly low to begin with on the search abandonment and on the shopping cart abandonment site, mostly because they have a fairly loyal customer clientele. However, in spite of that, there was improvement with both of those, and a not insignificant improvement. Now, the last phase, this advanced predictive search, was really just deployed and went live about 20 days ago. So we expect that search abandonment number, we really believe that's going to hit somewhere between 30 and 40% when it's all said and done. And the reason is very simple. When people abandon the shopping cart, it's because they can't find what they were looking for, or they were pointed in an aisle, as I was, with 10,000 similar items, and they simply don't have the time to sort through it. Now, the stronger your relationship with the customer, the more they'll be willing to put up with that. But most customers are going to walk down to the hardware store and get the screw where they can find it in a much, much faster time. And that's really what I wanted to share about Xander's.
So I'm happy to talk about Hampton Products and how we came to a decision that we needed a PIM, how we chose Perfion, and then the last 7 years of how we've walked the road to implement it. I was promised this would be an interactive session, so I don't have a PowerPoint. Rob mocked one up for me, and you can show that if you want to. Or I can go through kind of the points that we agreed on, and then if please interrupt me with questions at any time. I guess you have to type them in chat, and then maybe Eunice could bring them up. But I would welcome that, because this is where actually things happen. And I know that Rob and Tom, you guys make things actually happen, but I'm the customer, and I had to identify the need, sell this to the company, implement it, and make it successful. And if you're in that same boat, then I'm really happy to share our experience with you. I'm all about paying it forward and being open and sharing as much as I possibly can so that others could benefit from our successes and mistakes. Hampton Products is a consumer packaged goods wholesale distributor. We make and distribute very boring things made out of metal to big box retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart and Ace Hardware. We import those here in the Port of LA, and we have a distribution center in Orange County, and then go out from there. And so for about 35 years, Hampton Products has grown up in the space where we sell cases and pallets of things. And so our margin and our expertise and our success is really based on efficiency. And how do we make a penny off of a case pack of something that we're shipping to the big box retailers? If any of you are in that space, you know that's a tough space to be in, because manufacturing overseas, there's fraught with issues and costs, and there's very, very hard to get a cost increase there. And then, of course, you'll never get a price increase with any of the big box guys. So we're always trying to find ways to be faster and better and cheaper. And every time we touch and move something, it costs us money. Now, about 7 years ago, we thought we needed a PIM because we thought we were going to be in the e-commerce business, and we wish that we were today. We do have a couple of our own e-commerce websites, buyhampton.com, or what is the other one? Is brinksppr.com. So go there, buy stuff. But the reality is that we support our customers' e-commerce needs. And so, they're all very different. It would be nice if you could just put it in one place and syndicate it out, and it would just flow. But no, they're all very different, and they all take information differently and in different ways. And so there's that issue. But to take it back to why we thought we needed a PIM, is we thought we'd be supporting our own e-commerce websites. And if you sat in any of our engineering or marketing or sales meetings, you would find that we'd spend a lot of time trying to decide who has the current specs, who's got the most current packaging, who knows where it's made, who knows what, the factory, who knows the costs. And we solved a lot of our reporting issues years before by implementing a business information tool. And we all sort of realized that we needed the same thing for product information. Nearly every department in our company has either input, and most of them also have output needs from our PIM. And so we decided that to be more efficient and effective, we would need a product information management tool. And so as many things do, it became an IT project, and it should have been a business project. And so we used in IT to push things out to the business involved in the decision making. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with IT and projects like this. And so we went to work researching the options. Who is out there and what do they look like? What do they cost? Now, again, cost is an issue because our margins are thin. So we were looking around for a cost-effective tool that we could support, that we could implement, that we believed could grow with us. Also in the SMB space where we live, relationships are important, and making sure that your vendors and your partners share similar values to yours. I don't have a big enough staff that I can have experts in everything. And so you have to trust. You have to trust your partners and your vendors. And so we're looking for a combination of the best tool at the best price with the best relationship that we felt we could grow into. And so we came across Perfion, and they didn't have a huge presence in the US at the time. We believed that their commitment to growing their product and supporting their product was true. And so we bet the farm on Perfion. And also my tech team made me confident that the underpinnings and the back end, they really gave me good reviews on how the database was organized, how their API was arranged, and we really felt that we could support it, we could implement it quickly, and that we wouldn't have to keep going back for support. We wouldn't have to hire extra expertise that we didn't have. And so we jumped on with Perfion, and we had several big implementation meetings. You know, we got the whole company together, and the president stood up front and said, "We're going to do this, and it's going to be amazing." And we had a whole marketing plan that I put together to try and implement Perfion. And we had, you know, image of an elephant, and how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, and these little gray elephants everybody brought to the meetings. And 7 years later, we are still implementing Perfion, but we have had some significant wins along the way. Did it turn out exactly as we thought it would? No. We did implement the thing in about 2 weeks. We began using it right away. And we had a lot of successes. In fact, just this last week, we had an all hands meeting because Ace Hardware has a new program, and we sell several thousand SKUs to Ace, and we have to provide a refreshed, updated information through a template that we have to fulfill and send off to them. And so we had an all hands meeting, and it was really encouraging in that meeting that more than one key contributor early in the meeting jumped on and said, "This all has to come from Perfion." It was really, really nice. And so I can tell you that that our path to success has been real. We have had lots of great success with Perfion. It was the right tool at the right time. But I could talk for hours about how I think someone could do a better job of implementing it and getting adoption in their company. Our company has lots and I mean, I've been here 22 years, and there's a lot of people that have been here longer than I have. We've all sort of grown up at Hampton, and we've all have our ways of doing things. And it's really, really hard to get people to change, especially when someone thinks their success is based on how they manage, maintain, and keep and deliver information. So when you're talking about taking that away and putting it in a central place where anybody can get it at any time, a lot of people think that's wonderful, and a lot of people worry about their position. And so we combated that. We still combat that, but we no longer have hours and hours of, well, where does the information live, and who knows the most current, because it's all it's all in Perfion. We do still focus on supporting our customers' e-commerce, and that's grown tremendously over the years. We have lots of Amazon and Best Buy and Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace Hardware and many, many others that we support in that area. Also, all of our trade shows have gone virtual, and so everybody needs support for their trade shows. So websites and catalogs. We're really finding that being able to produce a catalog on the fly that is most up to date immediately, without a whole lot of the creative team or the marketing team having to touch versions, is really nice. So we're getting a lot of value out of that. And so that's kind of the introduction to who is Hampton and what we did. Are there any questions coming in, or should I just continue on my rants and ravings?
No questions yet. I think that the setup is here, and folks will be ready to ask when you get to the meat and potatoes. And I'll kick it off probably, which is, what made you choose Perfion as the right solution? And then and of course, how did you sell it to the management team? Are always questions everyone's going to be interested in.
Sure. So there's two levels, right? We agreed that Hampton needed a single source of truth. We needed to, and that was not a hard sell at all. It was easy to point out, and then everybody agreed that there wasn't one place in the company to go to get the most information, the most up-to-date information about the product that you're discussing. And so it was easy to point out some of the inefficiencies. Oh man, we just placed an order with the wrong packaging, or it took us 3 days to get this PO filled because we had to go to several different places to get the information. And I would point that out as often as I possibly could, and rally for, hey, there's a thing called PIM that we really should have. And you can liken it to, you know, a BI tool. You can liken it to a digital asset management tool. You can make those connections, and the rest of the executives get it. We can talk about we have, you know, fewer meetings, fewer mistakes, fewer opportunities for the wrong stuff to arrive at QA, because we can get ahead of it all. And so that was not a hard sell. And then tasked with, hey, go find the right tool. And that is also not hard. Just pick Perfion and you're done. But you know, there's always, well, what's the cost, and what's the support, and what's the cost of ownership, and do we have the right people to support it? And Perfion makes it easy. The back end is simple. It's easy to manage. The support is there. The cost, it was the lower cost, easy to implement solution. And it has definitely grown and been supported over the years. And so we looked at, I honestly couldn't tell you the others that we looked at. There's been a lot of water under that bridge. But we did look at, I think, at least 4, maybe 5, and it became clear early on that that Perfion, just based on their responsiveness to the sales cycle, based on the cost of it. You know, we did a couple of proof of concepts. We did maybe one. We looked at it under the hood. We priced it out. We got a feel for the support. We talked to 4 or 5 reference sites, all of whom are still on Perfion, even longer than we have been in the States. And it was confirmed all along the way many times that their culture, their core values, their product, their commitment to excellence and support and to growing the tool was there. And so that's why we selected Perfion. And I would do it all again the same today.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement.
Who else would do 2.5 hours for your partner?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, well, that's great. And actually, Brian, we do have 2 questions that popped up, and that is, would you describe, you know, some of the business benefit that you got? Can you quantify it? And then, what did you not anticipate in terms of the implementation? How did that work?
Sure. Well, you know, ROI is harder to, at least for me. I hate math, and I'm a very touchy-feely, subjective kind of person. That's why me and the CFO get along so well. But to calculate the return on investment, I can tell you that just the efficiency of not wasting time in searching around, and everyone would agree. I haven't put the pencil to paper and come up with a number, but oh man, the price was right. The implementation was easy, and the benefits of if you feed this thing, it will serve you. It will serve you well. And that's probably the biggest thing that I didn't anticipate was how many different people have to feed it. And so as we went through the implementation, we discovered that there are individuals in every single department in the company that are responsible to feed this beast and to and to make sure that the information is, that they have to be dedicated and committed to putting the information in Perfion on a timely basis and maintaining it there. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is to get all of those different personalities on board. Some people adopt quickly, and some people it takes a little bit longer. This may be an answer to a question that would come up later, but I used every strong arm opportunity I had to drive people into Perfion, because we knew it was the right answer. And so one example is that in my IT department that I manage, I've got a team that is responsible for EDI, and that EDI team also is the team that updates a thing called the GSX, or I can't remember what they call it now, GS1. They've changed their name, but it's the online repository of data that a lot of the big box retailers subscribe to. And so if a sales guy makes a sale of a new item, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware would say, okay, you got to publish that item in the online database so that they can then subscribe to it and then place the purchase order. It's not e-commerce, but it's EDI. E-commerce is a whole different beast. And so my EDI department handled publishing items to that online depository. And I made it, the first thing I did was made a rule that said, if the data is not in Perfion, we will not publish it. And so we make our living out of being quick and responsive and efficient, and people didn't see it immediately as us being responsive. But now everybody sees the benefit of, okay, they don't come to us anymore until the information's fully in Perfion. My EDI guy would have to go to 4, 5, 6 different people and say, you know, I can't publish it because I'm missing this information. Someone's on vacation, or someone's at a sales meeting. And so 2 or 3 days go by, and some other sales guy is saying, well, I need this published. And I'm saying, well, but the guy that has information isn't there. And so it really helps support getting everything into Perfion in a timely way. And so people are thinking today about Perfion first, and that drives everything else in the right way. And so does that answer the question, or did I take a rabbit trail?
I think it does, but let me come at it a different way, actually.
Sure.
So you said that it takes 2 weeks.
I lost you.
It took you 2 weeks to set it up, but I suspect it took longer than 2 weeks to get all that information and all of that together. How long was that process before, you know, you got, if you will, broke it into phases? Maybe it's phase 1, and, you know, how long to get it usable?
Oh, well, I mean, I could say it was usable within a couple of weeks. I mean, the structure was there. It's just a matter of feeding it, right? And so we discovered over the last 7 years, oh, hey, we should have HTS codes in Perfion. Okay, that's a new one. So let's add those fields. Oh, wait a minute, there's more than one HTS code for an item? It's possible. The Prop 65, so in California, we deal with the whole lead thing. And so our items subjected to Prop 65, we're always finding new things to add to Perfion. Images that support the catalogs that we produce. Like I said, when tariffs became, well, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago or so, when we really got hit with the tariffs, that was a whole new, we were always handling things, but the new responsibility around tariffs meant auditing everything in a much deeper way. And so making sure that your correct tariff codes are all there. So we're always finding new things to add and new ways to use Perfion, even though we're in the middle of upgrading our ERP, and we're going from Dynamics AX 2009 to D365. The questions always comes up, well, you can do all that in Dynamics, why not? And that's not the case. So we continue to invest. We continue to add to Perfion the features, the fields, the things that we think would be helpful. My new baby granddaughter is visiting, and that's why you hear the dogs anytime somebody comes to the door. Sorry about that.
No worries. That's an exciting thing. So that's
You're cutting
interesting.
out, Rob.
You mentioned several things, Prop 65, tariffs. So it seems like this is an evergreen process, but I'm surprised to have heard you say in some cases Perfion is a better place to keep it than the ERP.
Oh, absolutely.
Why is that in your opinion?
Well, an ERP is transactional, right? An ERP is really built to handle transactions, and Perfion is built to handle information, product information, and you can access it in a lot of different ways. So having the two things are integrated to some extent, but there's a lot of data in Perfion that does not need to be in your transactional database. And Perfion's API makes it so much easier to feed your websites, to download and fill out forms that you need. So and having the two, I mean, I have a couple of guys that are dedicated to supporting ERP. There's no way I want to saddle those guys with all the requests for views and access and feeding websites. So it's different expertise. It's a different developer need, although they're all the developers on the same team and they work together. But keeping those two things separate yet connected is much more efficient because they serve two different purposes. I'm not keeping margin data or sales transaction data in Perfion, and also I'm not keeping in-use photos or marketing bullet points in ERP.
Yeah, that's a great question, a great point. By the way, you said APIs from Perfion out to the websites and that marketing side. What is the connection between Perfion and your ERP like?
Oh, sure. So it works. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. We have we're currently on AX 2009. And for the last 3 years, we've been working towards a D3FO implementation that we've been doing in-house on our own, which should come to fruition, gosh, in about 6 months. But in Perfion, you have a lot of different choices. In this case today, for us, we display key information in Perfion that Perfion users would need, but that Perfion users wouldn't necessarily want. We wouldn't want them to go into AX to get. So we can show pricing, we can show inventory information. We can just display it in Perfion. So if you have a view and you want to go into Perfion and look at specs on an item, you can have fields that appear there that are served up by ERP for view only. And that is nice because then you don't have to go to two places, and I don't have to give access to ERP to staff that don't really need that kind of access. You can also do one or two-way integration if you want. There are fields in Perfion that are fed by AX. So certain groups maintain information in AX, and that data gets synced down into Perfion. You can go the other way if you wish to. We don't today. I think in the future we probably will. But if you had a new product process and you built your product in Perfion, data from Perfion could go into AX if you wanted to. We don't do that today, but I think in the future roadmap we probably will. But it's very, very easy to communicate between the two.
Well, that's great. That's a good story. Tell us a little bit about, on the other end, what's the customer's expectation, or how have they responded post your implementation of Perfion? Has that affected customer satisfaction, throughput, any of those kinds of things?
Well, in my position as Senior Vice President and CIO, I manage IT and customer care. And on the customer care side of things, the first thing I did was I built consumer care websites where my consumer care team, or consumers, I talk about customers and I talk about consumers. So our customers are the big box retailers that buy our stuff. But consumers are the individuals that go to the store, give their money to the store, and take our product home and try to use it. And my team serves both. So from a customer care perspective, they pay no attention to what we do. They just want the information, when they want it, and we're going to give it to them one way or another. Whether it takes us, 4 people working 3 days overnight to get information, or one guy downloading a form from Perfion, the customer doesn't care and the customer doesn't know. Perfion's allowed us to be much more efficient serving data to our customers. Their expectations are such that we're going to meet them one way or the other. It's just a matter of how much it costs us. For the consumer, it's very similar, right? The consumer goes to, they buy a padlock, they buy a door lock, they buy an ATV winch or a door closer, and they take it home and try to use it. And then they need support for whatever reason. They can go to our site, and our site serves up data from Perfion. So they can search for the item. One of the things I found early on that was very, very helpful was that once you take our item home and you throw the packaging away, you no longer have the item number, you just have a brand name. So our consumers come to our support site 24/7, they search by category, and they look at pictures. And oh, there's my lock, or there's my door closer. That's the thing. And does it match what I have? Yep, that's it. And then they can find information like instructions or a video maybe. All this is in Perfion being served up to our website. And if they can't get what they need there, they open up a support ticket. And since they've identified the item by its picture, the support ticket comes through to my support team with the item number. And so we immediately have the information from the consumer, the item number they're dealing with, and many times we just serve them up. We have a lifetime warranty on everything that we sell, and so 7 out of 10 times the consumer just describes, hey, this part broke, or is missing this, or it just simply wore out, and we just send them a new one because we know what's there. And so efficiency-wise, my customer care team, I can do customer care on about 14 different brands I do it 5 people, 1 shift, 5 days a week. And we sell a lot of stuff. And so on our customer satisfaction rate is 9.98 for our consumer care team. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Perfion allows us to serve up information on our website, our support site, that people can find 24/7. One thing that's interesting is that our sales and marketing teams, they're all about the new stuff. They just want to run down the road selling new stuff, and they leave all of this legacy stuff behind for us to support, and with a lifetime warranty. And so we added some different flags in Perfion. We have a flag, of course, active or non-active or new, different statuses of items, but we have OK for web and OK for support. And so if an item has been active and OK for web, then it can be used on a marketing site. If it is OK for support, I don't care what other flags are set, it will show up on my support site. Even though we're not selling it, it's not a go forward item. It may be 20 years old, but we still have to support it. And so I'm still able to serve that up at any of my .care sites so that consumers can find it and get help.
I'm so glad you mentioned the benefit of search in there. So appreciate that, Brian. Hey, I missed a follow-up question while I was talking, and so we had a follow-up question about dynamics, and that is there anything particular about Perfion's architecture or APIs that make it a real standout with Dynamics AX or D365?
Well, I can tell you that I don't have experience in the last 20 years with well, that's true, a whole lot true. We implemented AX 2009 in 2008. So in the past 12 years, I don't have experience with another ERP, but I'm confident based on what my my high-powered, super smart developers say is that Perfion's API is one of the easiest things that they have come across to use and support. And even old AX 2009 can do pretty much what we wanted to do, and then we'll be able to do so much more with D3FO, because D3FO will be easier to deal with. I don't think there's much I would change, or I haven't heard any complaints from my support team about the Perfion API. It just, every time I ask them to do something, they go, "Oh, that'll be easy," and they do it. And if they get stuck, they ask for help, and they usually have an answer within the day, and it's usually a very simple thing that they need to fix. So I've never ever had an issue making Perfion talk to anything.
That's fabulous. We'll probably include this with a little follow-up from Dick as well during his section. So, all right. So back to a couple of other questions that just came in, and so let me ask those. And that is, on your customer care site, you mentioned that you carry information going back quite a ways. Was there a challenge in getting that information, and how did you handle getting that information into your care site if it was real legacy?
Oh yeah, sure. And just like Tom's description, we have people that have been with Hampton for years and years and years, and information lives in their heads. I mean, I have one of my consumer care managers. She came from a company that we purchased, I think in 2006, and her parents both worked in the factory, and she grew up with them working in the factory of Right Products in Wisconsin. And Right Products is one of the older brands, US based, made in USA, storm and screen door hardware. And they're just in the middle of America, Wisconsin, and we bought them. They had been traded off and offshored about 5 or 6 times by the time we got to them. And that was a brand that we brought in, and I've had to dedicate Denise to writing a lot of the specs that live now, somewhere in China, because they were here, it was manufactured here, and then it went there. So it's definitely a challenge. You have to identify the things that are important to you, and that's things I would probably do differently from the very, very beginning. We started this thing with the whole how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time concept, and then we tried to bite off the whole elephant, rather than just identify, one brand or a handful of SKUs and just make those sing. I think that's probably what I would do differently today. But we tried to do it all at once. We got very excited about all the potential, and we started listing out all of the different pieces of information we had to have on each item, and then there was different for each category. You can imagine that the door hardware is different than towing, is different than bungee cords, right? And so we just got really hung up on trying to do everything all at once. And I think that if we had done it more slowly, I think people would have seen the value earlier. They see it today, but I think that more people would have seen it earlier, and we may have had faster adoption than the way we did it. But you're right. I mean, you have to hold on to those people and get that information in. Once it's in Perfion, then you're gold, right? But you got to get stuff out of people's heads and spreadsheets and legacy documents, and man, it can be a challenge for sure.
I've got a question of my own, Brian, and that is, when you started by saying that you support all the big box retailers and you like to sell crates and pallets. So talk to me about the difference in complexity and what has stopped you from full on going a direct to consumer. You alluded to got some other websites, but what's the challenge there? What's keeping you from doing that? Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, we have a culture especially in our distribution center in operations, we have a culture of efficiency, and that's what serves us well. Our operations manager knows to the penny what it costs to move a case through our distribution center, and so knowing that is the only way that you can improve that. And so he knows exactly what it costs to take a pallet out of a container, put it away, break it down, pick cases, put them on a cart or a forklift or a conveyor and run them down the line. He knows exactly the difference between the automation system and hand picking. And he does a really great job of making sure that I get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I appreciate him. When you ask him to break the case into eaches and to create a bin location for eaches and then pick eaches and put eaches in their own cases and tape those shut and put a label on each one and ship it by parcel out the door to a consumer, oh man, the cost is huge. And of course, the margin's better too. But then we don't have the volume going to our e-commerce websites to support a huge volume of that kind of work. And so, it's a chicken and egg, right? At some point, you've got to get there. And we do have an each pick section in our warehouse, and we do support that for many of our consumers and ourselves. But you look at the big payout for us is still shipping cases and pallets. And so we're dedicated to the whole concept of doing our own e-commerce. We also are up against the fact that many of or most all of our actual customers don't necessarily want us to compete with them. You can't put the same item up on our own e-commerce site, and so it becomes a challenge because our culture is based on that whole concept of scraping pennies off of cases, and we'd be better if we could make $1 off of an each. And I think that someday we'll get there. But we have a culture that doesn't quite support that yet, and we haven't gotten there. It requires a whole different level of product detail too, as you guys have all alluded, right? We're getting better with the marketing descriptions, with the in-use stuff, but man, it's turning this ship takes a long time.
Hi, everybody. Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. Glad to be here. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rob, for inviting me, Eunice, and all the rest of you gang here. Thanks for hanging out. I am the anchor keynote, so I'll be taking you through the rest of the afternoon, talk about why data management is the foundation to successful B2b e-commerce. So first of all, since it's my presentation, I've got a whole slide on me. As Rob mentioned, I'm Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. In case you haven't noticed already, spoiler alert, I don't do a lot of whispering, okay? I do shouting about the power and the value of and the strategic importance of proper data management. And my mission is really out there to help people understand the business value. So there were a lot of conversations and a lot of questions about how you get the business side to support this. The non-technical stakeholder, that C-level person that really doesn't understand and doesn't want to understand and actually doesn't need to understand the technical side, I'm your guy for that. So that's what I do, because I'm much more about the why than I am the how. I provide, actually, as a service, data evangelism as a service. I do all kinds of events out there, content on LinkedIn. If you're not following me yet, please follow me, and you'll see a lot of my videos, and I think that's where Rob and Jim found me originally there too. So I work with tech brands on the supplier side, and I also work with global enterprises, local enterprises, anybody that's at an enterprise level. So everybody on this call is an enterprise of some sort. You've got big systems, you've got lots of data, you've got disparate inputs, you've got to try and pull it all together. And I think I'm sort of hardwired for the master data taxonomy space, because my parents told me when I was a kid, instead of building with my Lego blocks, I sorted them. So if you folks out there and your kids sort their Lego blocks, they're going to be in the data business. There's some examples and some screenshots of some of my content. As you can see, the aforementioned puppets. So you got to watch the puppets of data. Too much tech talk People think it's actually recorded in their own company. So I think I've really kind of glommed onto the gestalt out there about way too much technical talk in the space. And I even have some bad data ideas that you might want to take a look at. And I'm particularly proud of being named the #1 thought leader in big data by Thinkers 360. So that was kind of cool. Right here, right over this way, that's my view. So I'm not bragging as much as confessing here, but I live in a spectacular place in Black Rock, Connecticut. I do a lot of kayaking. That's my version of social distancing, as you can see. So just because I can't go anywhere, I can actually be everywhere. So I'm delighted to be with all of you today. Everything we do turns to data. No matter what your business is, no matter where you are, businesses and business process that go from analog to digital, from manual to automated, means everything we do turns to data. And enterprises of all sizes are struggling to make sense of it all. How do they grow? How do they improve? How do they protect their business with all this data? And instead of delivering fabulous insights, a lot of this data is creating a tremendous amount of chaos. And so what I want to talk about is how you talk about that to the business leadership you've got. These folks have no time and all the money you need to fund what you're looking for. So you've got to focus again on the why. And as I go through this presentation, there are great practitioners already on this call. I was on that other session, with folks like Henrik. They know how to get this stuff done, absolutely. I talk about it. We all play a role. Mine is to help people understand it, to create that narrative. So what you're going to see here is not some way to design your reference data architecture or create your data governance program, but ways, hopefully, in little nuggets, little twists of phrase that might help you explain what you know deep in your heart is going to help your organization, but you just can't get this, you just can't seem to get people to understand it. So this is how I talk about the space that we're all in and how we actually put that data to work. And some of the pictures you're seeing here, again, I do a lot of events, or used to, certainly last year, so I'll show you some screenshots and some shots of me in action. I'm uncharacteristically quiet and unanimated here physically, but I can get out there and really get passionate about this space that I love. So a couple of B2b e-commerce issues here and some trends. You know, we've all heard all day today, you're going to need deeper data. You're going to need technical information. You're going to need photos. There's a lot of incomplete descriptions out there. People have trouble with missing hierarchies. There's cleansing and augmentation efforts. I mean, Brian said today, you need great content if you want to get people's attention on platforms like Amazon. And all that data needs to come together somehow. So you've got a higher number of SKUs. You might have a kitting and bundling activity that you've got. So need more process and production data around that. You've got different pricing tiers. And the theme I heard all day today, whether it was Brian, whether it was Trish, who was absolutely fabulous, I hope she's still on the call here, or whether it's me, we're all telling you the same thing. You're going to need better data. Better data makes things better. That's my slogan. And so you've got to be able to articulate that and show that. And people have asked about immediate ROI and kind of taking this kind of data and putting it against a single use case. You have to think right away much more broadly about how data is an enabler for the strategic intentions of your enterprise. That's what this kind of data does as fuel. And we're all sitting here in a defining moment. I love this little meme going around on LinkedIn and elsewhere. What led to your digital transformation? And e-commerce certainly is a really tangible form of digital transformation. Was it the CEO? Was it your CTO? Or was it COVID-19? And I love this other cartoon here where they're just sort of chatting about, maybe we'll get to it and that wrecking ball comes slamming into the side of your building. Brian gave you some great stats today. If you're not in e-commerce right now, full-fledged, both feet in, then your business is absolutely already suffering. So what do you need to do that in terms of the data you need to back that up? So data management is the foundation of successful B2B e-commerce. Let me kind of break that down for you. And again, I try and boil things down to kind of their essence, to a way that it's really extensible and accessible to every type of business out there as long as you're an enterprise. So digital transformation, again, I think we can use those interchangeably here in our e-commerce conversation. Digital transformation and B2b e-commerce, one and the same in a lot of ways. It means a lot of things to a lot of people, but what it means to every organization is you've got more data now than you've ever had before. You've got to find ways to manage it that you never did before, so you can do things that your organization never dreamed of before. And of course, it always takes a combination of technology and people and process and data. And I'm going to focus exclusively on the data side. And not just all the data side, but the structured data side. Master data, reference data, metadata, product data, all that foundational piece part stuff that everybody has been talking about all day today, that Trish talked about as core to the success of her activity. This is the area that I'm going to focus on in terms of data. And the value of every digitally transformative customer initiative, of every as-a-service offering, of every foray into e-commerce, of every implementation of enterprise software of any type is inextricably linked to the successful output of your data management program. So if you don't have one, you should feel worried right now. You should feel concerned. You should make sure your leadership understands that they need to have a formal data management program in place to be able to fuel the things you want to do. Now, let me break down digital transformation for you. And again, in my work, I try to simplify things, and this might be oversimplification for some of you, but I don't believe it's simplistic. I think it's a way that it's very accessible for everybody to try and understand it. So I've found in my journey, and I've talked to every kind of company and every vertical all over this planet, and I see common themes, common trends, common characteristics, and those are the things I want to share with you. So a lot of organizations are stuck in what we would call a legacy state. They've got these multiple silos: sales, finance, operations, product, different systems that propel and support those different activities, and those create different data. And that creates this siloed situation where people don't have a common understanding of everything that's important to their business. Now, legacy doesn't mean old. You could have brought a brand new customer data platform yesterday, and what you've done is you've allowed your marketing department to create yet another silo. So it's not about being old, but it is about being in a legacy state where things do not connect. And so you want to move from this legacy state into an integrated enterprise, that horizontal value. And you want to try and become relationship centric. Take all the most important things about your organization, about your business, and put it at the center of what you do, both strategically and systematically. So you hear this a lot with customer 360, product 360. Think about that terminology. 360, circle, it's centric. All that geometry certainly works for me. Hopefully it works for you too. You want to find a way to move from that legacy state to being an integrated enterprise and being relationship centric. Now that's great internally, but we've talked a lot today, all day, about e-commerce, where you have to be connected to a much broader ecosystem. So how do you become part of this trust network, as I would call it, within connected ecosystems? So you can connect and interoperate and transact with other parties on a systematic basis, on a code-to-code basis. So moving from this legacy state to an integrated enterprise to connected ecosystems takes, as I have found, two key universal requirements: authenticated identity and a common data structure. You need to authenticate the identity, whether it's a product, whether it's a SKU, whether it's a customer, whether it's a vendor, whatever those relationships and those brands are. And then you need a common data structure or a link or a connection. Again, I'm not going to get technical here. I don't care how you design it, but you must have a common data structure to interoperate between your own internal systems and then externally with your partners. And I would say master data is the most important data any organization has. It is the data in charge of your business. It is the data that gives you authenticated identity and a common data structure. It's the data about your relationships, customers, vendors, partners, prospects. It's the data about your brands, your offerings, your services, your products, the things you make, the people you sell to and buy from and partner with. And if you don't think that is the most important part of your business, again, I'll sit here and I'll explain it as long as we need to, so you're your leadership understands it as well. The most important data any organization has is master data. And under that big bucket, I call master data, metadata, reference data. It's all part of the same thing, in my view, as we start to talk to the business side. We don't want to get too granular with them about all these different technical specifics. Now, definition of master data, just to kind of level set here, always good to look at Wikipedia, right? We used to look at Webster's dictionary, but now we go to Wikipedia. So if you look up master data in Wikipedia, you will find it as a single source of common business data used across multiple systems, applications, and processes. I love that definition. I put it there. That's right. I wrote that definition in a white paper for Microsoft that they sponsored me to do about 10 years ago. So it's been in Wikipedia for 10 years unedited. So don't anybody touch it. Okay, just leave it. And I love MDM wherever I can find it. So I pulled off the road and took a selfie in front of Michelson Door Manufacturing. It's important everywhere. So when you think about master data, reference data, metadata, this standardized data that you use across your organization, here's some little nuggets on how you might be able to describe it to the folks who don't understand it. You want to think about it as a common language for your relationships and your brands, the two most important parts of your business. You want to think about it actually as rows and columns. That's a good way to think about data. So my apologies to all you graph database and data visualization folks out there, but when you're talking to a business leader, I think about rows and columns. I think about a table. And people are really good at columns, but they're not good at rows. Master data is the row part of that equation. Columns are what rows are about. So you want to make sure you've got this standardized structure to allow you to integrate rows and columns. Just think about having two spreadsheets that you're trying to pull together and how difficult it is to make sure the columns are aligned. So again, it's about rows and columns. I think of it as truth and meaning. And you've got to determine the truth first before you derive meaning. And so when we think about analytics, business intelligence, all that other wonderful, sexy stuff, that's deriving meaning. But you've got to determine the truth first. And I'm a truth guy, hence my hat here. I don't have a meaning hat. I'm all about the truth. As data managers out there, you manage the truth. You need to create the truth. You can handle the truth for your organization. And Trish mentioned it today, that single version of the truth, that common version of the truth. And beware of folks actually on the technical side who try and get too philosophical about this. We're not talking about some sort of spiritual, personal awakening here in terms of truth and meaning. We're talking about business, okay? Do you have a common definition for your customer? Do you have a standard hierarchy for your products? Let's get that down straight. And it's about caring for your relationships, as I mentioned, and growing and improving and protecting your business. In my experience, literally everything a business does falls into one of those three buckets. And everything they use data and analytics for is part and should enable those three buckets. How do we grow the business? How do we improve the business? How do we protect the business? And Trish, I keep coming back to her because she told a fantastic data story, and I've heard lots of them. So she talked about when somebody asked about the ROI, and she mentioned already that organization is starting to recognize all the things they can't do if they didn't have this data foundation. That's the ROI. How does it enable where your company wants to go? How does it help it grow? How does it help it improve? How does it help it protect? And making good decisions. That's all business people want to do, is make good decisions. But good decisions based on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. So you want to make sure you've got that truth first before you derive any meaning. And that leads me to what I call the golden rule of data, GIGO. It's as old as data itself, right? Garbage in, garbage out. What you put in is what you get out of it. But I try to elevate it because if GIGO, which we all understand, was actually a way to hook the management side and get support from your C-level leadership, it would have worked already. So I try to elevate it again to this golden rule of data. Maybe it's goodness in, goodness out. But if you put bad data and you put garbage into ERP, you get a bad ERP. You put bad data into CRM, you get missed opportunities, you get a bad customer experience. You put bad data into ML and machine learning, you get bad robots. You put bad data into BI, you get BS. You put bad data into AI, you get AS, artificial stupidity. So no matter how you slice it and no matter how you dice it, the golden rule of data prevails. It is as sure as gravity. What you put in is what you get out. And so your data journey again, and I keep coming back to this, I divide it up because a lot of folks, especially on the business side and especially on the leadership side, get kind of starry-eyed and distracted by the analytics part of data, about the sexy AI, about the fantastic visualization, about data science, about data literacy, about all that wonderful stuff that people can actually see. That's the challenge with master data. You don't really see it, but you sure can feel it. So it's hard to show what it can actually do right away instead of showing somebody some fabulous graph or visualization. So again, you want to determine the truth first around data management, data governance, master data, reference data, PIM we talked a lot about today, DAM, RDM, MDM, all that stuff I bucket under this idea of determining the truth of data management before you derive meaning, artificial intelligence, data science, and so on. So the classic challenge I've seen, and I think this will probably resonate with some of you folks out there, is you've got different departments, sales, marketing, finance, operations. You've got different regions. You might be local, you might be global, you might have different divisions and so on. You've got different go-to-markets. How do you get the stuff you make to the people who buy it? So we talked a lot today about the e-commerce channel, but you still have the physical channel. And part of that physical, even that e-commerce channel, you've got to, in some cases, put something in a truck that goes in a warehouse, that goes in somebody else's truck, that goes in somebody else's warehouse, that finally gets to your business buyer. So there's a lot of different go-to-market activity there, distributors, intermediaries. The more levels there are, the more chances you have for data not working together. And then you've got more and more data coming from third parties. And so it creates this classic challenge where multiple systems and workflows create disparate data with differing definitions that lack internal standards. I think I heard 3 or 4 people already say this in some form or not today. But hopefully this looks familiar to you. If we were all in the same room, I'd see a lot of heads nodding. I think I could put this in front of a CIO of a Fortune 1000 company this afternoon and go, is this your problem? And they go, how'd you guess? Because it is everywhere. Everybody is feeling in some form of this kind of pain as they sit in that legacy state to move to an integrated enterprise to be part of a trust network. So the common solution is master data, reference data, metadata, data management. I put it on the bottom. I don't put it on the side or in the middle or in the top. I try and draw it as a foundation for all those silos. Or for all these verticals that you have, it's that horizontal. Or for all those columns you have, it's the row. So graphically, it's important to draw the pictures in a way that people can understand them, actually from the back of the boardroom, rather than in the front where they're squinting at your reference data architecture. So again, not trying to diss that whole how process. It's all very important, but think again, how do you get people's attention really quickly and get them to understand the gravity and the gravitas of what you are trying to explain? This hopefully works for you. Now, MDM can equal pain. I've talked to a lot of folks out there, and I talk to a lot of data practitioners, and they don't use these kind of business euphemisms like we have a challenge or we have a hurdle. They talk about physical pain. And I'm reminded of an anecdote early in my career when I was talking to the head of sales about a data service. I've spent my life selling data management services. That's how I got good at this kind of storytelling. And he said, you know what, Scott, we can slice and dice our data any way we need to. All I have to do is push a button. And this really courageous operational data person at the end of the table stood up and he said, sir, I'm the button. I'm sure some of you are that button out there. That button hurts. It hurts when the national account people want their hierarchy the way they want it. It hurts when you have to jam everything into your new e-commerce platform and it doesn't fit. That stuff hurts. So I understand it. I feel it. I recognize your pain. And if it's any consolation, it's not your fault. It happens everywhere. So I'm going to show you what pain looks like. We're late in the day. We've been watching this for a while. Hopefully, if you're watching this at home, you don't have any kids in the room there. You want to make sure that nobody's peeking at your screen because this can be very graphic content and disturbing to any data stewards out there. So I call it naked data because there's no way to hide from it. Here you go. That's it. These are from embarrassingly large global enterprises who don't know what they're doing with the New York Times, who can't figure out Nestle, who don't spell. What are they doing with 7-Eleven? I don't know if you notice it on there, but in the middle of that column, 7 equals 11. Not in base 10, it doesn't. So I know we talked a lot about product, but you've got probably your own version of this too in terms of your product nomenclature. But the example here is this is a classic situation. This is garbage in. And so while we talk about really high-level strategic intentions, we also have to shame the organization to a certain degree. And it's showing them that the data sucks. You can't do what you need to do if this is what you're dealing with. And if it happens because you've got 28 places to create a customer or to input a product, that's why you need data management and data governance around that. But you just show it here. Once you show people data like this, the selling stops. And if you think, actually, this last column here of 7-Eleven, this was from a customer that I dealt with who actually had a retail sales force. So they put people out into stores. And that call file, as they called it, had over 275 different configurations of the 7-Eleven banner name. Beautiful. Lots of creativity in the field, none of it selling product. That's the trouble. So, and if you think the software is going to fix it on its own, if you put this in Excel, you get July 11th. Unless you're over on Henrik's side of the ocean, and then you put it in Excel over there and you get November 7th. So either way, it doesn't work. So how do you start to structure things? How do you start to put that governance around it? And again, I talk a lot about structuring data. I think that's a really important way to describe it because that everybody can understand that. And it's rather objective too. So if you want to structure a relationship or you want to structure a piece of product information, I talk about the 4 C's of master data: code, company, category, and country. So we start with code, a unique identifier. Every record has a code. You put something in a PIM system, you put it in your MDM, you put it into SAP, it creates a number, a customer number, a product ID, whatever it happens to be. But you need a code to anchor the rest of that data. I have a code, therefore I am in a database. Now, are you unique? You're unique, at least in that database. We're not going to talk too much about integrating other databases, but all of them should actually have a code as well. Then you need some sort of hierarchy or a company or some sort of parent-child relationship. Ship to, plan to, sell to, or it might be category, taxonomy for your products, but you need some sort of category structure. And when you're e-commerce, you certainly need that for the relationship side, for your customers. So you know when they log in from the left, bottom left oval, that they're related to the bottom right oval. So you can get the common terms executed and shared with them. So you need some sort of hierarchical relationship. You need a category. You need some sort of segmentation. Category drives market share. It drives targeting. We're really good with this kind of company or this kind of customer likes this type of product. So you've got to have a category structure on there. And that may have some sort of granularity as well. It could be channel and sub-channel. It could be genre and sub-genre. It could be type and subtype. Depends on what we are categorizing, but there's some sort of structure on that. Now, every database I've ever seen, and I'm sure a lot of you in this audience here probably have the same thing, you have a category called other, don't you? You might even have other. Really, that's a good one. The only one I ever looked at that didn't have other had an attribute value of DK, and we asked them what that meant, and it said, don't know. So you got some sort of other in there. And then just because they all start with C, you have country or some form of geography, and country's got lots of granularity too, and geography does. You could have zip code and postal code and city, state, and province, and sales market, and media market, and measurement market. So you've got all these different configurations of geography. Now, if you take these 4 C's and you apply them to your data, they answer very specific and extremely important questions like, where is everything? What kind of thing is everything? Who owns it? And is it unique? If you think about applying that to your database and you knew where everything was, what it was, who owns it, and it's unique, think about all the data problems that go away. Let's just take a Zen moment together. Think about all the data problems that would go away if you knew that. I feel better just thinking about it. Now, you might have different nomenclature for it, right? You might call it an entity, hierarchy, sector, and geography. It might be an outlet, account, channel, and region. If it's a product, It rolls up to a brand and a segment and a market, but it's about a thing, a parent, a type, and place. And again, it's where it is, what it is, who it is, and that it's unique. And these 4 C's here, I think, are a good way to talk about data structure. And structured data works harder than unstructured data. So again, my apologies to any analytics folks out there who their whole world is based on unstructured, semi-structured, demi-structured data. Most of what you do in your organization, most of the time, with most of your data, is based on highly structured, well-governed, expertly stewarded data. It's not on all that unstructured stuff. I think about these 5 pillars as a way to think about data governance, data management holistically. So I'm not going to go too deep in them. I've got some other content on that because we've got a limited time here, but they are, and they're not necessarily in rank order, but let me talk you through some of them. Their value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality. And one point I'm going to make is I'm going to end with quality because most people start there. And this might be heresy to some of you out there, but I think quality is the most emotional, subjective thing on this page. Quality doesn't sell your program in to leadership. When you start talking about data quality, they might think you're whining. It's just not something that people can really grab onto. It is a means to an end, actually. So I think there are stronger ways to talk about it. You need quality, not saying you don't. You have to manage quality, of course you do. Quality metrics are really important for your data department. But if quality was the way that we could sell in these programs, it would have worked already. We've been talking about the need for high quality data for decades, since there's ever been data, and we're still struggling with explaining it and getting the right funding. So I'm telling you now, quality, don't lead with it. You want to talk about value and the importance of this value of this data to help your business scale. Certainly e-commerce is a form of scaling your business. Instead of doing something 10 times, how do you do it 100? Or instead of 100, you do it 1,000,000. This type of standardized structured data allows you to do that. You do want some sort of structure, code, company, category, country, whatever you want to call it. You need it connectable, so it's integratable across all your systems, all your processes, both internally and externally with your partners. And you want it to cover your business. If you're going to dump a certain product line into e-commerce system, you got to make sure you've got the coverage of all of those piece parts and all those products with the right kind of data. And then, of course, it needs to have quality. So I'm not going to belabor it too much, but again, try it differently. Quality, I have found, isn't the way to lead the discussion. And if I had a minute with your CEO to pitch quality, I wouldn't use the word quality. I would talk about we're trying to implement this e-commerce platform. We don't have the data structured for our product information in a way that our customers can find us. Search works off microdata, it works off metadata, it works off master data. If we cannot be found in an Amazon environment with 1 billion different suppliers and a gazillion different products, we will not succeed. Structured data allows us to do that. How's that for a little ad-lib pitch to your CEO? Try something like that. Now, how do we sort of put this data to work to kind of sum it all together here? So I think about these use cases, these buckets, these ways that people actually use data. So I've found in my travels that these 8 8s, as I call them, we talked about 5 pillars, we talked about 4 C's, we talked about 3 phases. Now I'm going to talk about what I call the 8 8s. I haven't found a way to use data that doesn't fit into one of these. So maybe this will help you as well as you try to understand and try to explain to the business side how data fuels and powers your organization. So the first 8, right at the top, right at the pinnacle, is relate. It's the most important 8 on there. We all want to build relationships. That's what your business is all about. You don't have any relationships, you do not have a business. So the thing that all our data needs to do is to help us grow and improve and protect our relationships through our brands, our products, and our services. That's the whole point of business. But before you relate, you've got to validate. Is this relationship okay? Did somebody log in? Have I authenticated that identity? Is it a duplicate? Are they trying to be deceptive? Do they have the proper credit terms? Are they bad debt? All those validation processes that are part of having a healthy relationship, you need to do up front. And validation up front allows you to keep a lot of garbage out before it gets in. Then you want to integrate. How do you take everything you know about whatever that thing is and integrate it in some way? It could be physically, it could be virtually, it doesn't matter. Again, I'm not designing your technical side for you, but you do want to take everything you know about something and try and pull it all together so everyone has a common understanding and a common view. Then you want to aggregate. Most reporting is some form of aggregation. How many things do you have and what markets are they in and who owns them and what kind are they? Again, back to my 4 C's. So your quarterly reports for your CEO are all about aggregating all your activity together in some predefined structured ways. Then you want to interoperate. There's probably not a more important 8 for this group here in terms of interoperability. So how do you move on a code-to-code basis and engage on a code-to-code basis with your partners? A really good example is something that Brian didn't mention up. I'm sure he knows all about it. When you sell something in Amazon, now I don't know if it's on the B2B side, but it certainly is on the consumer side, they create a unique identifier called an ASIN. That identifies your product in their system. That allows everybody to interoperate off of the same standardized data. It's bigger than the Universal Product Code, which is probably the most accessible form of interoperability when you try to explain it to somebody. That's why I explained it to my mother. It's about the UPC. That barcode and the code attached to it, the data attached to it, lets every product in every store be bought. So when you bring your bottle of Coke to the front of the store and you run it across the cash register, it goes beep. That little beep, that is interoperability with structured data in action. There's nothing like it. So this is the foundation here on the bottom, and I drew it that way in purpose. So you want to validate, integrate, aggregate, and interoperate. So then you can evaluate. Then you can do BI. Then you can do AI. Then you can do analytics. Then you can do business intelligence. Then you can do all that wonderful stuff because you have that strong foundation of trusted data below it. If you do it first, then you get meaning before truth, and that's a mess. So you want to make sure you evaluate based on that standardized data in some way. And then you want to communicate. We've talked a lot, again, that's a different form of interoperability. When you sit in a room and talk to people about a business issue, do you have 3 things and they've got 6 things and 2 of them are different? You're arguing about the definition of whatever? No, when we talk about this data management space, we'd say things like, are we all on the same page? Do we have a common understanding? Do we all know what we mean? And if you want to have a relationship, you have got to communicate. Just ask anybody you love. So there's 7 8s here. The last 8 is circulate. Data to have value has got to be in motion. It cannot be stuck in some silo. It can't be locked in some report somewhere. It certainly has to circulate through an e-commerce environment, no matter what, and it's got to move. So I've got the 8 8s. I told you I have a lot of video content out there. I've got a 9-part video series that goes much deeper in this. If you're interested, we'll send you the links. So let's wrap it all up here and kind of graph this idea of these 3 phases of digital transformation. And I want to map them on this little graph here between increased value, greater value, and deeper interoperability. And the hypothesis is the deeper you are interoperable, the more value you are getting out of an experience. So you start again with this legacy state, multiple silos, not a lot of interoperability by design, so not a lot of value. Then you move to being relationship-centric across an integrated enterprise, more interoperability, more value. And then you get to this trust network across connected ecosystems where you're really driving a tremendous amount of value. And if you think about a through line here, this is actually achieving semantic consistency at ever increasing levels. You're doing the same thing at a bigger and bigger scope. So if you start way on the bottom there and just sort of integrating and aligning methodologies and processes and workflows, and you move to departments and apps, then you move across ecosystems and entire markets working off of the same data or links to the same data or one data, and the kind of magic that can happen there. Again, the common standard universal requirements across all to move across that vector are authenticated identity and a common data structure for customers, vendors, partners, prospects, brands, products, services, offerings, the things you make, the people you sell to and buy from and partner with. So master data as the foundation of digital transformation, as the foundation for successful B2B commerce, provides semantic consistency, enables deeper interoperability, and creates greater value. That's the statement. Now you got to tease that apart if you're going to put that in front of your board, but hopefully that's your banner that you can march under. That's what we are driving towards. How do we get more and more interoperable based on this standardized data foundation? And in case you're wondering whether data management is going to go out of fashion, I'll tell you right now, it is macro trend agnostic. If you look at all these different bubbles about all this stuff that's going on and today in all our different businesses, whether it's e-commerce or transforming your customer experience or the fourth industrial revolution, they all need data management. Now, whatever those bubbles were filled with 10 years ago and whatever they're going to be filled with 10 years from now, it is still going to need well-managed, expertly stewarded, fantastically governed data as a foundation. There just isn't any other way to do it. It's as old as commerce itself, the ability to communicate and relate with other parties in a standardized way. So hopefully this helps you here. Again, I try to put it in sort of this accessible, kind of mildly entertaining fashion here with my 4 C's and my 5 pillars and my 8 8s and my 3 phases. And if you can't remember all of those, just remember 2 things. Remember truth and remember meaning. And remember determining the truth first before you derive meaning. So with data management as the foundation of successful B2B commerce, I hope these nuggets have helped. I can tell you in my experiences, the challenges you face, the opportunities you have, the aspirations you might dream of are more the same than they are different, no matter what business you are in. You've got all have sort of common data challenges and common data opportunities. And data and e-commerce obviously is a way of data to fuel can change the nature of your business. There's not a lot of departments out there who actually can stand up and say, we can change the nature of our business. So I think it's a huge opportunity. And master data, reference data, metadata, microdata, all that standardized data, it can absolutely be your hero. So I got a couple resources here, including a master data superhero cartoon, which is over on that side of the page here. Just search master data superhero and it'll pop up for you. I actually have an article, which I'll find a way to send to everybody, called The 3 V's of Data Storytelling, Vocabulary, Voice, and Vision, which is a way to start to construct your own narrative on how to secure upper management support for your data initiatives. And then I've got Too Much Tech Talk videos and a bunch of other straighter stuff that I'd love for all of you to try and take a look at. So as everything we touch and everything we do turns to data, this is your opportunity. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I want to thank Rob and the team for having me. If you want to follow me, actually put your phone right now up to your screen to that QR code. It will bring you right to my LinkedIn profile, Talk About Being a Data Guy. And I'll also make sure people can get in some way my YouTube channel, where I have over 50 videos in there about all kinds of things. Some I talked about today and some I didn't get to. But again, I'll turn it over to Rob here and see if we've got any questions. But thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Scott, I'm going to tell you, this is the first time I have sat up and taken notice of data since I was in engineering school. This was really great. Thank you, Scott. I love the way you broke it down. And even though, yes, it's deceptively simple, it actually goes pretty deep. Really appreciate your insight. Let me just, we are a little behind, as we all know. But I think we've got time for a couple of questions, and it looks like we've got a couple coming in right now. Okay,
Super.
Great. Let me also add, while I'm waiting for a couple of questions, Scott will definitely get in touch with you directly, but we will make sure to send out links as part of our follow-up. When we send you the surveys and everything, you'll also get links and direct contact information with Scott, and you will get some great content. I guarantee it. I've enjoyed following him. Okay, so the first question that we've got in is, Scott, how can I express quality in a way that would actually be relevant?
Again, it's a great question. So my feeling is you just talk about things like structure. Mm-hmm. You talk about interoperability. you talk about coverage, and you can add quality in there. But I probably over-rotate on pounding quality because I feel like most people over-rotate on the other side. And so if you just went in, I mean, quality, again, I mentioned it, very emotional, very subjective. Quality measures are absolutely subjective. And when you go to your board and say, we want to increase our data quality from 59% to 87%, I don't know how much relevance that has. So you can show them what bad quality data looks like. But again, I keep coming back to the word structure. That's how I taught Dun & Bradstreet, where I worked, to sell its data and stop talking about high quality that nobody could really measure and start talking about how they allowed people to structure their customer information. So for me, I really feel like it's, you know, it's about the vocabulary. And I start, like I said, there's 3 V's, which is a knowing link to big data here, vocabulary, voice, and vision. The words you use are absolutely critical. So think about words that are more relevant to the broader organization than things like quality. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I got it. We got another question in, and that is, Scott, you talked about movement of data as your 8th 8. Could you describe how does that happen? I mean, what's the goal of moving data?
So that's what, you know, again, sort of driven around interoperability. How do you get a common, Trish brought up some great examples, right? So she had that outlier group in the warehouse inputting data offline instead of making sure it was moving across the organization. So I feel like that's a good example. And then because they all came back to that common version of the truth, that truth was the source of the definitions, of the structure, of the hierarchies for these most important data entities, and that moves across the organization. In a lot of contexts too, it's about reporting. So I didn't go into that because it's less relevant to this group directly. Obviously, we all do a lot of reporting. But if you think about a dashboard, you know, being in self-service data and self-service reporting, which is certainly a trend now, that is moving data across the organization and moving out of a legacy state where, you know, there's a guy who's been here 30 years who does that special report that everybody loves and only he knows how to do it. Those days are already over. You have to be able to crack that open and not let it get stuck in some PDF or some guy's special computer, because the rest of the organization can benefit from it.
We're going to end there, Scott, except there was one more comment that came across I just wanted to share with you, and that is just blown away. So I think that's a great way to end.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how you know, let's stop with your head, right? You're just blown away. Scott, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And,
Thank you, this is fun.
Yeah, we will get everything out to everyone. We're looking forward to getting that out for you. Thank you, everyone, for listening.